Welcome, fellow wanderer of the wasteland, to the forgotten vigil of heroes who never drew breath beyond the drawing boards of imagination. Tonight, we explore the complete sagas of 13 lost protagonists, characters who were meant to lead their own stories but vanished into the archives of cancelled dreams and abandoned code. These are tales of revolutionary spirits, exiled vault dwellers, and unlikely champions whose adventures exist only in the realm of what might have been. So settle in, make yourself comfortable, and let your mind drift as we traverse the paths of possibility together. Close your eyes when you're ready, and let these untold chronicles carry you into peaceful slumber as we explore every chapter of the heroes who never were. The morning sun filtered through the reinforced glass of Vault 13, casting familiar patterns of light and shadow across corridors that had known the same rhythms for over a century. Within those steel-wrapped halls, 7 potential champions prepared for journeys they would never take, each carrying dreams and destinies that would remain forever unwritten in the official chronicles of the wasteland. These 4 forgotten souls, Arnold Black, his brother Barney, Tanya Macmillan, and Frank Luciano, represented paths not taken, stories that might have reshaped the entire mythology of post-nuclear America. Arnold Black, known to most as Dutch despite his American birth, carried within his massive frame the contradictions that would have made him one of the most memorable vault dwellers ever to venture into the scorched earth beyond Vault 13's great door. Born to Dutch immigrant parents who had sought the American dream in the decades before the Great War, Arnold inherited both their stubborn resilience and their tendency toward explosive action when pressed beyond reasonable limits. His parents, Johannes and Margot Black, had arrived in America during the Resource Wars, carrying little more than their determination to build something lasting in a world that seemed determined to tear itself apart. The Black family's story within Vault 13 began during the earliest days of the shelter's occupation, when their selection for the vault had more to do with Johannes's expertise in heavy machinery than any special social status or political connection. The elder Black had worked in the industrial foundries of Detroit before the war, his massive hands and engineering mind making him invaluable for maintaining the complex mechanical systems that kept Vault residents alive in their underground sanctuary. When the bombs fell and Vault 13 sealed itself against the nuclear fire above, Johannes Black found himself responsible for equipment that would determine whether hundreds of people lived or died in the decades to come. Arnold grew up in the shadow of his father's reputation, inheriting not just Johannes's impressive physical stature, but also his instinctive understanding of how mechanical systems functioned and failed. By the age of 15, Arnold could diagnose engine problems by sound alone, his massive hands proving surprisingly delicate when working with precision instruments and complex circuitry. The Vault's other residents learned to step aside when Arnold Black approached a malfunctioning piece of equipment, knowing that his combination of brute strength and technical expertise could solve problems that stumped the official maintenance crews. But Arnold's size created problems that his mechanical skills could not solve. Vault 13 had been designed for average-sized humans, and Arnold Black was anything but average. At 6 feet 8 inches and weighing over 300 pounds, he moved through the vault's corridors like a gentle giant navigating a dollhouse, constantly aware that his normal movements could damage the infrastructure that kept his community alive. The chairs in the vault's common areas bore the scars of Arnold's presence, reinforced and re-reinforced, as engineers struggled to create furniture that could support his weight without constant replacement. The door frames throughout Vault 13 told the story of Arnold's passage through daily life, their edges worn and occasionally cracked where his broad shoulders had made contact during moments of carelessness or haste. The maintenance staff learned to perform regular inspections of any entrance that Arnold used frequently, understanding that structural damage was not a matter of malice, but simple physics. When an object the size of Arnold Black encountered obstacles designed for smaller people, something usually gave way, and it was rarely Arnold. Arnold's personality had been shaped by a lifetime of being too large for his environment, creating a man who was simultaneously gentle and potentially explosive, careful in his movements, but devastating when his patience finally reached its limits. His fellow vault dwellers learned to recognize the warning signs that preceded Arnold's rare outbursts of temper. The way his massive hands would clench into fists that could punch through steel plate, the growling quality that entered his usually soft-spoken voice, and most ominously, his habit of muttering, "I'll be back," in heavily accented English whenever someone pushed him beyond his considerable tolerance for frustration. The phrase, "I'll be back," had become something of a running joke among Vault 13's residents, but it was laughter tinged with genuine nervousness about what might happen if Arnold Black ever decided to follow through on his implied threats. Those who knew him best understood that his anger was slow to kindle, but burned with frightening intensity once ignited, and that his threats were not empty posturing, but promises backed by the physical capability to demolish whatever had earned his displeasure. Arnold's tag skills reflected his unique combination of technical expertise and overwhelming physical presence. His repair abilities were legendary within Vault 13, earned through years of maintaining equipment under his father's tutelage and refined through countless hours of solving mechanical problems that would have stumped lesser engineers. When critical systems failed, it was Arnold Black who crawled into spaces too small for his frame, his massive hands somehow finding room to work miracles with tools designed for more delicate manipulations. His melee combat capabilities were equally impressive, though they had been demonstrated only during supervised training sessions and the occasional disagreement that escalated beyond verbal resolution. Arnold's approach to hand-to-hand fighting was devastatingly simple. He relied on his size and strength to overwhelm opponents before they could exploit any technical advantages they might possess. His combat philosophy was essentially that of a living battering ram, using his considerable mass and power to end fights quickly and decisively. The water chip crisis that would eventually drive one Vault dweller into the wasteland would have taken on entirely different dimensions if Arnold Black had been chosen as Vault 13's reluctant champion. His approach to problem-solving combined methodical technical analysis with a willingness to use brute force when more subtle methods proved insufficient. The journey to Necropolis would have been transformed by Arnold's presence, his intimidating appearance potentially opening dialogue options unavailable to smaller, less imposing characters. Imagine Arnold Black's first encounter with the hub's security forces, his massive frame casting shadows that made even hardened wasteland guards reconsider their usual aggressive questioning of strangers. The merchants and traders who controlled the hub's economy would have found themselves dealing with a customer whose physical presence alone commanded respect, whose soft-spoken requests for information carried the implicit weight of consequences for those who chose to be unhelpful or dishonest. The super mutants of Necropolis would have presented Arnold with opponents more closely matched to his own physical capabilities, creating confrontations where brute strength and technical knowledge would have proven equally valuable. His ability to repair and maintain equipment under battlefield conditions would have been crucial in extended campaigns against the Master's forces, while his melee combat skills would have made him devastating in the close quarters fighting that characterized urban warfare in the post-nuclear world. Arnold's relationship with the Master himself would have created fascinating, dramatic possibilities, as two beings of exceptional size and intelligence confronted each other across the philosophical divide that separated human determination from mutant transcendence. The Master's attempts at conversion would have faced unique challenges when directed towards someone whose personal strength matched his moral convictions, whose technical expertise made him valuable but whose stubborn independence made him dangerous to any authority that sought to control rather than convince. But perhaps Arnold's most significant impact on the original Fallout's narrative would have come through his interactions with the various communities struggling to rebuild civilization in the post-war wasteland. His combination of technical skills and physical intimidation would have created unique solutions to problems that other Vault dwellers might have approached through diplomacy, stealth, or pure violence. The water merchants of the hub would have found themselves negotiating with someone who could both repair their purification equipment and physically enforce any agreements they made. Arnold's journey through the wasteland would have been marked by a series of engineering miracles and intimidating confrontations, his reputation spreading ahead of him, as word traveled between settlements about the giant from Vault 13, who could fix anything and break anyone who threatened innocent people. His technical expertise would have made him invaluable to communities struggling with pre-war machinery they could no longer maintain, while his physical presence would have deterred raiders and other predators who targeted vulnerable settlements. The relationship between Arnold and his younger brother Barney represented one of the most touching aspects of the Black family dynamic within Vault 13. Despite being the younger of the two, Barney had actually grown larger than Arnold, his 7-foot frame and proportionally increased muscle mass, making him appear even more imposing than his already intimidating older brother. But where Arnold possessed the technical intelligence that made him valuable to Vault society, Barney's mental capabilities had not developed at the same pace as his physical growth. Barney Black, known to most Vault residents as Barney the Barbarian, embodied the classic archetype of the gentle giant whose limited intellectual capacity was balanced by an enormous capacity for loyalty and affection toward those he considered family. His cognitive limitations had been apparent from early childhood, when it became clear that he would never master the complex technical skills that made his father and brother so valuable to Vault operations. Instead, Barney found his place in Vault society through his willingness to perform the heavy manual labor that others could not manage. The nickname Barney the Barbarian had been coined by younger Vault residents who were simultaneously fascinated and intimidated by his size, but it had evolved from mockery into something approaching affectionate respect as the community learned to appreciate his gentle nature and absolute reliability. Unlike many people with cognitive disabilities who might have been marginalized in the competitive environment of Vault society, Barney found acceptance through his obvious devotion to his family and his eagerness to help anyone who needed assistance with tasks requiring physical strength. Barney's relationship with Arnold was characterized by the protective instincts that older siblings often develop toward younger family members, complicated by the physical reality that Barney was larger and stronger than the brother he looked to for guidance and approval. Arnold had assumed responsibility for managing Barney's interactions with the more complex aspects of Vault society, ensuring that his brother's limitations were not exploited by those who might seek to take advantage of his trusting nature. The daily routine that Arnold and Barney had established within Vault 13 reflected their complementary abilities and mutual dependence. Arnold would diagnose mechanical problems and develop repair strategies, while Barney would provide the physical strength needed to move heavy equipment or apply the brute force necessary to free seized components. Their collaboration had become legendary among Vault maintenance crews, who learned to call for the Black Brothers whenever a job required both technical expertise and raw physical power. Barney's tag skills reflected his role as the muscle behind his brother's mechanical expertise. His unarmed combat abilities were even more devastating than Arnold's, his simple approach to fighting enhanced by size and strength, that made him capable of ending most confrontations with a single blow. His approach to combat was uncomplicated, but effective. He would charge directly at opponents, relying on his size to intimidate them into surrender, or his fists to end their resistance quickly and permanently. His big guns proficiency had developed through his fascination with the largest weapons in Vault 13's armory, though his use of such equipment was carefully supervised by Vault security personnel who understood that Barney's enthusiasm for impressive firearms needed to be balanced with safety considerations for other residents. His favorite weapon was a massive sledgehammer that had been specially constructed to take advantage of his exceptional strength. Its reinforced head and extended handle, allowing him to deliver devastating attacks that could crush power armor or break through reinforced barriers. The prospect of Barney Black venturing into the post-nuclear wasteland would have created both opportunities and challenges that no other Vault dweller could have duplicated. His intimidating presence would have been even more effective than Arnold's in deterring hostile encounters, but his limited intellectual capacity would have made him vulnerable to deception and manipulation by wasteland inhabitants who might seek to exploit his trusting nature. Barney's approach to the water chip quest would have been characterized by straightforward solutions to complex problems. His simple worldview, cutting through the political and social complications that often made wasteland diplomacy so treacherous. When faced with the Master's philosophical arguments about mutant superiority and human evolution, Barney's response would have been refreshingly direct. He would have evaluated the Master's words based on whether they seemed kind or cruel, helpful or harmful, honest or deceptive. The super mutants who served as the Master's army would have found themselves facing an opponent whose physical capabilities matched their own, while his moral clarity remained unclouded by the intellectual complexity that often paralyzed more sophisticated individuals when confronted with difficult choices. Barney's battles against mutant forces would have been epic confrontations between beings of comparable physical power, his sledgehammer clashing against super mutant weapons in displays of raw strength that would have become legendary throughout the wasteland. But perhaps Barney's most significant contribution to any potential Fallout narrative would have been his ability to see through the pretensions and manipulations that characterize so much of post-war politics. His cognitive limitations would have made him immune to the sophisticated arguments that demagogues and dictators use to justify their actions, leaving him free to judge people and factions based on their actual behavior rather than their stated intentions. The communities that Barney encountered during his wasteland journey would have been forced to confront their own moral assumptions about intelligence, value, and human worth. His combination of physical power and intellectual limitations would have challenged the social hierarchies that had emerged in post-war society, demonstrating that contribution to community welfare could take many forms, and that wisdom was not always correlated with traditional measures of intelligence. Barney's relationship with his brother would have remained the emotional center of any story featuring both characters, their mutual dependence and affection, providing stability and motivation in a world where family bonds had become both more precious and more fragile. Arnold's protective instincts toward his younger brother would have driven many of his decisions, while Barney's desire to prove worthy of Arnold's guidance would have inspired feats of courage and determination that surprised those who underestimated him based on his cognitive limitations. If the Black brothers had ventured into the wasteland together, their partnership would have represented one of the most formidable combinations ever seen in post-nuclear America. Arnold's technical expertise and strategic thinking would have been perfectly complemented by Barney's physical power and moral clarity, creating a team capable of solving problems through either sophisticated engineering solutions or overwhelming applications of force, depending on what the situation required. Tanya Macmillan, known to those who witnessed her in action as Blade, represented an entirely different approach to surviving and thriving in the post-nuclear world, where the Black brothers relied on their impressive physical presence and mechanical expertise. Tanya had developed abilities that made her nearly invisible when she chose to be, yet devastatingly effective when circumstances required direct action. Her small frame and deceptive appearance concealed capabilities that would have made her one of the most dangerous individuals ever to emerge from Vault 13. At barely over 5 feet tall and weighing perhaps 105 pounds, soaking wet, as the Vault residents often said, Tanya appeared almost fragile compared to the imposing figures of Arnold and Barney Black. But her delicate appearance was profoundly misleading, the result of a lifetime spent developing speed, agility, and precision rather than raw strength. Those who made the mistake of underestimating Tanya Macmillan based on her size usually discovered their error too late to benefit from the knowledge. Tanya's background within Vault 13 had been shaped by her natural talent for movement and her instinctive understanding of how to use size and speed advantages against larger, stronger opponents. As a child, she had been the undisputed champion of the Vault's junior athletics programs. Her combination of speed and agility, making her unbeatable in competitions that required quick reflexes and precise movements. Her transition from childhood games to serious combat training had been seamless, her natural abilities finding perfect expression in the arts of stealth and precision fighting. The nickname Blade had been earned during her advanced combat training, when Tanya's speed with edged weapons had impressed even the Vault's most experienced security personnel. Her technique with knives, swords, and other bladed implements was characterized by movements so fast they seemed to blur, her attacks arriving before opponents could react to defend themselves. But more than mere speed, Tanya possessed an intuitive understanding of anatomy and physics that allowed her to place her strikes with surgical precision, ending confrontations quickly and efficiently, while minimizing unnecessary violence. Tanya's approach to combat was fundamentally different from the overwhelming force favored by the Black brothers. Where Arnold and Barney relied on their size and strength to intimidate opponents into submission or crush their resistance through brute force, Tanya preferred to end fights before they truly began. Her preferred tactic was to remain undetected until the perfect moment for action arrived, then strike with such speed and precision that her opponents were defeated before they realized they were under attack. This preference for stealth and surprise had made Tanya invaluable to Vault 13's security operations, though her methods sometimes created ethical concerns among the Vault's leadership. Her ability to eliminate threats silently and efficiently was undeniably useful, but the ease with which she could kill had raised questions about whether such capabilities were appropriate for someone living in a peaceful, enclosed community where conflicts were usually resolved through discussion and compromise. Tanya's tag skills reflected her specialization in speed, stealth, and precision. Her small guns proficiency was legendary within Vault 13, her accuracy with pistols and rifles making her the Vault's unofficial marksmanship champion despite her youth. Her shooting technique emphasized speed and precision over raw power, her preference being for weapons that could deliver accurately placed shots quickly rather than those that relied on massive firepower to overwhelm targets. Her sneak abilities were even more impressive than her marksmanship. Honed through years of moving undetected through Vault 13's corridors and chambers, Tanya had developed an almost supernatural ability to avoid detection. Her movements so carefully controlled that she could approach within arm's reach of alert guards without being noticed. This skill had made her invaluable for security assessments and had occasionally proven useful for gathering information about vault politics that others preferred to keep private. But it was her melee weapons expertise that truly set Tanya apart from other potential vault dwellers. Her knife work was described by training supervisors as poetry in motion. Her blade techniques combining speed, precision, and grace in ways that seemed to elevate violence to the level of art. Her preferred weapons were balanced throwing knives that could serve as both melee implements and ranged weapons, their versatility matching her own adaptability in combat situations. The prospect of Tanya Macmillan venturing into the post-nuclear wasteland would have created storytelling opportunities unlike anything seen in the official Fallout narrative. Her approach to the water chip crisis would have emphasized infiltration and information gathering over direct confrontation. Her small size and stealth capabilities, allowing her to penetrate enemy strongholds undetected and strike at crucial targets without alerting entire hostile organizations to her presence. Tanya's first encounter with the hub would have been markedly different from the experiences of other vault dwellers. Rather than approaching the trading post openly and subjecting herself to the questioning and potential exploitation that greeted obvious newcomers, she would have infiltrated the settlement under cover of darkness, gathering intelligence about local power structures and potential threats before revealing her presence to anyone. Her knowledge of who could be trusted and who represented danger would have been comprehensive before she engaged in any significant interactions. The information networks that connected wasteland communities would have been particularly vulnerable to Tanya's intelligence-gathering techniques. Her ability to move undetected and overhear private conversations would have provided her with insights into the political and economic forces shaping post-war society, knowledge that could have been leveraged to achieve her objectives through manipulation and indirect action rather than direct confrontation. Tanya's confrontation with the super mutants would have represented the ultimate test of her speed and precision against opponents whose physical capabilities far exceeded those of normal humans. The narrow corridors and complex architecture of locations like Mariposa Military Base would have provided perfect environments for her hit-and-run tactics. Her ability to strike quickly and disappear before retaliation allowed her to chip away at mutant forces that might have overwhelmed other vault dwellers through direct assault. The Master's underground cathedral would have become a deadly maze of shadows and sudden death, with Tanya Macmillan moving through its chambers. Her infiltration techniques would have allowed her to approach the Master himself without fighting through his entire army, while her precision weapons would have been perfectly suited for the kind of surgical strikes needed to disable the complex life support systems that sustained the mutant leader's existence. But perhaps Tanya's most significant impact on the Fallout narrative would have come through her ability to gather and act on intelligence that other characters might never have discovered. Her stealth capabilities would have uncovered secret alliances, hidden agendas, and concealed weaknesses that could have been exploited to resolve conflicts with minimal violence and maximum efficiency. The communities that Tanya encountered would have found themselves dealing with someone who knew their secrets before they chose to reveal them, whose understanding of their internal politics and personal motivations would have made traditional diplomacy seem clumsy and ineffective by comparison. Her approach to problem-solving would have emphasized precision and efficiency over grand gestures, her solutions elegant in their simplicity and devastating in their effectiveness. Tanya's moral code would have been shaped by her understanding that information was power and that knowledge of an opponent's capabilities and intentions was often more valuable than superior firepower. Her ethics would have been pragmatic rather than idealistic, focused on achieving beneficial outcomes through the most efficient means available rather than adhering to abstract principles that might interfere with practical success. Frank Charles Luciano, known to his friends and admirers as Lucky, represented yet another approach to surviving and thriving in the post-nuclear wasteland. Where the Black brothers relied on physical intimidation and Tanya used stealth and precision, Frank's greatest assets were his natural charisma and his seemingly supernatural ability to emerge unscathed from situations that would have proven fatal to less fortunate individuals. His combination of good looks, smooth talking, and incredible luck had made him one of Vault 13's most popular residents, though his reputation as a romantic had occasionally created complications for both himself and the objects of his affection. Frank's background within Vault 13 had been shaped by his natural talent for social interaction and his gift for making other people feel comfortable and appreciated in his presence. Unlike many Vault residents who had struggled to find their place in the enclosed community's complex social hierarchy, Frank had seemed to effortlessly navigate the interpersonal relationships that determined so much about quality of life in their underground sanctuary. His ability to charm both men and women, young and old, had made him a natural mediator in conflicts and a sought-after companion for social events. The Luciano family had been among Vault 13's original residents, selected for inclusion based on Charles Luciano Sr.'s expertise in hydroponics and food production, rather than any particular social status or political connections. The elder Luciano had been responsible for establishing and maintaining the agricultural systems that kept Vault residents fed throughout their decades of isolation. His work requiring both technical knowledge and the interpersonal skills needed to manage the teams of workers who tended the Vault's food production facilities. Frank had inherited his father's gift for working with people, though his talents had developed in directions that were more social than technical. While Charles Sr. focused on the practical aspects of keeping Vault residents fed and healthy, Frank had become the unofficial social coordinator for many of Vault Society's recreational and cultural activities. His natural charisma and organizational abilities had made him invaluable for maintaining the community morale that was essential for psychological survival in their enclosed environment. But Frank's talents had also created problems that threatened to disrupt the carefully maintained social order that kept Vault 13 functioning as a cohesive community. His reputation as a Casanova had been earned through a series of romantic relationships that had sometimes created jealousy and conflict among Vault residents who found themselves competing for his attention. His ability to charm people into doing what he wanted had occasionally been used for personal benefit rather than community welfare, creating ethical questions about the appropriate use of natural talent in a closed society. The incident with the overseer's daughter had been the culmination of Frank's romantic adventures within Vault 13, a scandal that had threatened to tear apart the political structure that governed their underground community. The details of their relationship remained the subject of speculation and gossip among Vault residents, but the consequences had been clear enough. Frank's position within Vault Society had become untenable, and his volunteer status for the water chip mission had been motivated as much by the need to escape an uncomfortable situation as by any desire to serve his community. Frank's tag skills reflected his specialization in social interaction and his remarkable ability to avoid the consequences of dangerous decisions. His speech abilities were unmatched among Vault 13's residents, his natural charisma enhanced by years of practice in persuading people to see situations from his perspective. His conversation techniques combined genuine charm with strategic manipulation, his understanding of human psychology allowing him to find the arguments that would be most effective with specific individuals. His gambling proficiency had been developed through countless hours spent in Vault 13's recreation areas. His natural luck, enhanced by his ability to read people and situations with uncanny accuracy. Frank's approach to games of chance combined statistical analysis with psychological insight. His understanding of probability supplemented by his gift for recognizing when opponents were bluffing or when circumstances were trending in his favor. But it was Frank's luck stat that truly defined his approach to problem-solving and survival. His seemingly supernatural ability to avoid negative consequences and encounter positive opportunities had become legendary within Vault 13. His presence at any activity, increasing the chances that things would work out well for everyone involved. Whether this luck was genuine fortune or simply the result of Frank's ability to position himself advantageously in developing situations remained a subject of debate, but its effects were undeniable. The prospect of Frank Luciano venturing into the post-nuclear wasteland would have created narrative possibilities that emphasized social interaction and diplomatic solutions over violence and intimidation. His approach to the water chip crisis would have been fundamentally different from that of other potential vault dwellers, focusing on building relationships and gathering allies, rather than simply overpowering obstacles through superior force or stealth. Frank's arrival in the hub would have been marked by his rapid integration into the settlement's social and economic networks. His natural charisma would have made him welcome in the trading post's various establishments, his conversation skills allowing him to gather information and build relationships that could be leveraged to achieve his objectives. The merchants and power brokers who controlled the hub's economy would have found themselves dealing with someone who understood their motivations and could offer mutually beneficial arrangements rather than simply demanding cooperation. The political complexities that characterized post-war society would have provided perfect opportunities for Frank's diplomatic talents. His ability to see situations from multiple perspectives and find common ground between opposing factions would have made him invaluable as a mediator in conflicts that might otherwise have been resolved through violence. The various settlements and organizations struggling to establish themselves in the wasteland would have found in Frank someone who could help them negotiate agreements that served everyone's interests. Frank's confrontation with the Master would have been perhaps the most fascinating aspect of his potential narrative. As two master manipulators engaged in a battle of words and ideas, rather than simple physical combat, the Master's philosophical arguments about human evolution and mutant superiority would have faced their greatest challenge when presented to someone whose understanding of human nature was as sophisticated as Frank's, whose ability to find flaws in reasoning was enhanced by his gift for recognizing when someone was trying to manipulate him. But Frank's greatest impact on the Fallout narrative would have come through his ability to build and maintain the alliances that would be necessary for long-term recovery and reconstruction in the post-war world. His diplomatic skills would have been invaluable for establishing trade relationships between isolated communities, his charm essential for overcoming the suspicion and hostility that characterized so many intergroup interactions in the wasteland. The communities that Frank encountered would have found themselves dealing with someone who genuinely cared about their welfare and possessed the skills necessary to help them achieve their goals. His approach to problem-solving would have emphasized cooperation and mutual benefit over competition and conflict, his solutions creating lasting value for everyone involved, rather than simply advancing his own interests at others' expense. Frank's moral code would have been shaped by his understanding that human relationships were the foundation of any successful society, that trust and cooperation were more valuable than any material resources. His ethics would have been fundamentally optimistic, based on his belief that most people were basically decent, and that conflicts usually resulted from misunderstandings or competing needs rather than fundamental evil. The journey that any of these four characters might have taken through the original Fallout's narrative would have been profoundly different from the canonical story that players experienced. Arnold Black's combination of technical expertise and intimidating presence would have created solutions based on engineering knowledge and physical deterrence. Barney's simple morality and devastating strength would have cut through complex problems with refreshing directness. Tanya's stealth and precision would have enabled surgical strikes against key targets while avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Frank's charisma and luck would have opened diplomatic possibilities that might have resolved conflicts without violence. But perhaps most importantly, these 4 lost vault dwellers represented different aspects of human nature and different approaches to the fundamental challenges of post-apocalyptic survival. Their stories would have explored themes of family loyalty, moral clarity, strategic thinking, and social cooperation that complemented the themes present in the canonical Fallout narrative, while adding new dimensions to the game's exploration of what it means to be human in a world that has seemingly abandoned humanity. The loss of these characters from Fallout's final version represents one of the great what-if scenarios in gaming history, a reminder that every creative work contains within it countless possibilities that remain unexplored. Their stories exist now only in the realm of imagination, but they continue to inspire questions about choice, consequence, and the myriad ways that individuals can respond to impossible circumstances with courage, ingenuity, and hope. The year 2000 brought with it the promise of technological revolution and the threat of civilizational collapse, though few could have predicted that both would arrive in the form of a cancelled video game that dared to imagine the Brotherhood of Steel not as noble protectors, but as conquering tyrants, spreading their vision of order through systematic oppression and calculated genocide. Fallout Extreme had been in development for several months when the corporate machinery of creative destruction consumed it entirely, leaving behind only concept art and design documents that preserved the stories of 4 revolutionaries who would never raise their weapons against the forces of technological fascism. The world that Abel, Big Betty, Caleb, and Uber Dan were meant to inhabit represented a fundamental reimagining of post-nuclear America, a timeline where the Brotherhood of Steel had abandoned their traditional role as preservers of knowledge and protectors of civilization to become the very thing they had once sworn to oppose. This alternative history began in the decades following the original Fallout, as the Brotherhood's leadership gradually succumbed to the corrupting influence of absolute power and the seductive logic of authoritarian efficiency. The transformation had been gradual at first, so subtle that even longtime Brotherhood members failed to recognize the changes until they had progressed beyond any possibility of reversal. What began as necessary expansion to protect recovering settlements evolved into territorial conquest, justified by superior technology and military discipline. The Brotherhood's traditional isolation gave way to active intervention in wasteland politics, their advanced weapons and power armor making them effectively unopposable by any force that dared challenge their authority. By the time the Brotherhood established their new headquarters in Alaska, their original mission had been completely perverted into something that would have horrified the organization's founders. The preservation of technology had become the hoarding of power, with advanced equipment reserved exclusively for Brotherhood members, while civilian populations were deliberately kept in states of technological dependence that ensured their continued submission. The protection of civilization had transformed into the imposition of order, with Brotherhood law replacing local customs and traditional authorities throughout their expanding sphere of influence. The human populations caught within the Brotherhood's expanding empire found themselves faced with a choice that was no choice at all: submit to conscription as expendable infantry for Brotherhood military operations, or accept enslavement as laborers in the industrial facilities that supported the organization's technological superiority. The propaganda that justified these policies spoke of necessary sacrifices for the greater good, of the burden that superior beings must accept when guiding inferior ones toward enlightenment, but the reality was a system designed to extract maximum value from human resources, while providing minimum consideration for human dignity. The mutant populations that had struggled to establish themselves in the post-war world faced an even grimmer fate under Brotherhood rule, where humans could at least serve as workers and soldiers. Mutants were viewed as genetic pollution that needed to be eliminated entirely from any territory under Brotherhood control. The systematic extermination campaigns that swept through mutant settlements were conducted with the same technological efficiency that characterized all Brotherhood operations, their advanced weapons making resistance futile and escape nearly impossible. This was the world into which Abel had been born, a reality where the symbols of hope and protection had been transformed into instruments of oppression and genocide. His early years had been spent within the Brotherhood's military structure, his natural leadership abilities and tactical intelligence making him a valuable asset for an organization that prized competence above all other virtues. He had risen through the ranks with impressive speed, his combination of strategic thinking and personal charisma earning him the respect of superiors and subordinates alike. But Abel's growing understanding of what the Brotherhood had become created a moral crisis that would ultimately transform him from loyal soldier to revolutionary leader. The missions that had once seemed like necessary interventions to protect civilian populations revealed themselves to be conquest operations designed to expand Brotherhood territory and eliminate potential threats to their hegemony. The advanced technology that had once represented humanity's hope for recovery was being used to ensure that recovery remained forever incomplete, that civilian populations never developed the capabilities that might challenge Brotherhood's superiority. The breaking point came during a pacification operation in Oregon, where Abel's unit was ordered to eliminate a community of ghouls who had established a successful agricultural collective in an area that Brotherhood planners wanted to claim for their own expansion. The ghouls posed no threat to anyone, their radiation immunity making them valuable partners for reclaiming contaminated lands that normal humans could not safely occupy. But their independence and self-sufficiency made them unacceptable to a Brotherhood that demanded total control over all aspects of life within their territory. Abel watched his fellow soldiers systematically murder families whose only crime had been achieving prosperity without Brotherhood permission, their advanced weapons turning what should have been a community celebration into a massacre that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. The efficiency with which his comrades carried out their orders, the casual brutality they displayed toward beings whose humanity they had been trained to dismiss, forced Abel to confront the reality of what he had become through his service to an organization that had lost all connection to its founding principles. The decision to rebel was not made in a moment of passion, but through months of careful consideration and moral reckoning. Abel understood that opposing the Brotherhood meant accepting certain death if he was captured, that his former comrades would show him no mercy once he revealed himself as a traitor to their cause. But the alternative, continuing to participate in systematic oppression and genocide, had become psychologically impossible for someone whose conscience remained intact, despite years of military indoctrination. Abel's desertion from the Brotherhood was carefully planned to maximize his chances of survival, while minimizing the consequences for other soldiers who might be suspected of sharing his moral objections. He chose to disappear during a routine patrol mission, his knowledge of Brotherhood procedures allowing him to create false evidence, suggesting that he had been killed by hostile forces rather than voluntarily abandoning his post. The deception provided him with precious time to establish himself in territory beyond immediate Brotherhood control, before his true status as a deserter could be discovered. The early months of Abel's life as a fugitive were marked by the gradual recognition that individual resistance to Brotherhood oppression was futile, that meaningful opposition required organization and coordination on a scale that could match the technological and military advantages that made the Brotherhood seemingly invincible. His military training provided him with the tactical knowledge necessary for guerrilla warfare, but his understanding of Brotherhood capabilities made him acutely aware of how difficult it would be to achieve anything more than symbolic victories against such a well-equipped and disciplined enemy. The recruitment of other revolutionaries required Abel to identify individuals who possessed both the skills necessary for effective resistance and the moral conviction required to sustain a campaign that would inevitably involve tremendous personal sacrifice. His first recruit was Big Betty, a super mutant whose very existence represented everything the Brotherhood sought to eliminate from their vision of a purified world. Her decision to join his cause was motivated not just by self-preservation but by a determination to protect other mutants from the genocide that had already claimed so many of her people. Big Betty's background was typical of the first generation of super mutants, her transformation having occurred during the chaotic period, immediately following the Master's defeat, when scattered FEV samples continued to create new mutants without the guiding intelligence that had characterized the original Unity movement. Unlike many of her kind who had been driven mad by the transformation process or had embraced the violent nihilism that made them targets for human persecution, Betty had retained both her sanity and her moral compass. Her size and strength were impressive even by super mutant standards, her 8-foot frame and proportionally massive musculature making her capable of feats of strength that rivaled military vehicles. But more important than her physical capabilities was her intellectual development, which had continued after her transformation in ways that enabled her to think strategically and understand complex social and political relationships. She possessed the rare combination of mutant physical advantages and human emotional intelligence that made her uniquely valuable as both a warrior and a leader. Betty's experiences as a super mutant in Brotherhood territory had provided her with first-hand knowledge of the systematic persecution that her people faced under the organization's rule. She had witnessed the extermination campaigns that had reduced thriving mutant communities to empty ruins, had seen friends and family members murdered simply for existing in a form that Brotherhood ideology deemed unacceptable. Her hatred for the Brotherhood was personal and visceral, but it was tempered by a strategic understanding of what would be required to defeat such a powerful enemy. The decision to join Abel's revolutionary movement represented Betty's recognition that individual survival was meaningless if it came at the cost of abandoning her people to continued genocide. Her recruitment to the cause brought not just her personal capabilities, but also her connections to surviving mutant communities that could provide intelligence, supplies, and additional recruits for operations against Brotherhood forces. Her presence in the movement served as living proof that cooperation between humans and mutants was possible despite Brotherhood propaganda that insisted otherwise. Betty's role within the revolutionary organization extended beyond her obvious value as a heavy weapons specialist and frontline combatant. Her experience as a member of a persecuted minority had given her insights into the psychological dynamics of oppression and resistance that proved invaluable for understanding how to build and maintain morale among fighters who faced overwhelming odds. Her natural empathy and protective instincts made her an effective counselor for other revolutionaries struggling with the moral and emotional challenges of violent resistance. But perhaps Betty's most important contribution to the cause was her ability to serve as a bridge between different communities that might otherwise have remained suspicious of each other's motives and capabilities. Her mutant heritage gave her credibility with non-human populations, while her retained humanity made her acceptable to human revolutionaries who might have been uncomfortable working with more obviously altered beings. Her presence in the movement demonstrated that the revolution was fighting for principles rather than species, for justice rather than revenge. The third member of Abel's revolutionary team was Caleb, a precision marksman whose skills with ranged weapons had been developed through years of surviving in the wasteland as an independent operator before the Brotherhood's expansion reached the territories where he had made his blend living. Unlike Abel and Betty, whose opposition to the Brotherhood was motivated by moral outrage at their policies, Caleb's recruitment to the cause was initially more pragmatic. The Brotherhood's territorial expansion threatened the lifestyle and livelihood that he had spent years establishing. Caleb's background as a freelance sniper had begun during his adolescence, when natural talent for marksmanship had provided him with a means of survival in regions where traditional agriculture and trade were impossible due to environmental contamination or hostile wildlife. His services had been in demand among settlement defenders, caravan guards, and other groups that needed accurate long-range fire support, but lacked the resources to maintain full-time military specialists. His reputation for precision and reliability had made him wealthy by wasteland standards. The personality that Caleb had developed through years of independent operation was characterized by supreme confidence in his abilities, balanced by a realistic understanding of his limitations. His pride in his marksmanship skills was justified by consistent performance under the most challenging conditions, but he was also aware that individual excellence meant nothing against organized military forces with superior numbers and equipment. His arrogance was tempered by pragmatism, his boasting balanced by strategic thinking. Caleb's recruitment to Abel's cause had been motivated initially by self-interest rather than ideological commitment. The Brotherhood's expansion into territories where he operated threatened to eliminate the market for independent contractors like himself, their military organization preferring to use their own personnel rather than hiring wasteland specialists whose loyalty could not be guaranteed. His choice to join the revolution was essentially a business decision. Resistance offered better prospects for long-term survival than submission or flight. But Caleb's involvement with the revolutionary movement gradually transformed his perspective from purely mercenary considerations to genuine commitment to the cause of liberation. His interactions with other resistance members, particularly his exposure to the stories of those who had suffered directly under Brotherhood oppression, awakened moral sensibilities that his independent lifestyle had allowed him to ignore. The sniper who had once cared only about payment and personal survival became a dedicated fighter for principles that transcended individual interest. Caleb's tactical role within the revolutionary organization was defined by his exceptional accuracy with precision weapons and his understanding of long-range combat techniques. His preferred operating method involved establishing concealed firing positions that allowed him to engage high-value targets at distances that made retaliation impossible. His shots carefully planned to maximize psychological impact while minimizing exposure to counterattack. His kills were surgical strikes that eliminated key personnel while leaving their comrades wondering where death had come from. The weapons that Caleb preferred reflected his philosophy of precision over volume, quality over quantity. His primary rifle was a heavily modified pre-war sniper system that had been customized for maximum accuracy and reliability, its scope and firing mechanisms adjusted to his personal specifications through years of incremental improvements. He also carried a selection of specialty ammunition types designed for specific tactical situations: armor-piercing rounds for heavily protected targets, explosive rounds for equipment destruction, and subsonic rounds for stealth operations. But Caleb's most valuable contribution to the revolutionary cause was not his individual marksmanship, but his ability to train other resistance members in advanced shooting techniques that multiplied the organization's overall combat effectiveness. His teaching methods combined technical instruction with psychological conditioning, helping other fighters overcome the mental barriers that prevented accurate shooting under combat stress. His students learned not just how to aim and fire, but how to remain calm and focused when their lives depended on shot placement. The psychological profile that Caleb presented to his fellow revolutionaries was complex and sometimes contradictory, his outward confidence masking deeper insecurities about his place in a world that seemed increasingly hostile to individual excellence. His need to demonstrate his superiority through displays of marksmanship reflected an underlying fear that his skills might not be sufficient to ensure his survival in changing circumstances. His boasting served as a form of psychological armor that protected him from acknowledging how vulnerable he really was. Caleb's relationships with other team members were complicated by his competitive nature and his difficulty accepting that other people might possess skills or knowledge that exceeded his own capabilities. His respect for Abel's leadership was grudging but genuine, based on recognition that strategic thinking was as valuable as tactical expertise. His interactions with Betty were marked by fascination with her physical capabilities, balanced by discomfort with her mutant nature. His connection with Uber Dan was perhaps the strongest, based on mutual recognition of professional competence and shared understanding of what it meant to be defined by specialized skills. The fourth and final member of Abel's revolutionary team was Uber Dan, an explosives expert whose seemingly supernatural calm under pressure masked a psychological condition that had been both blessing and curse throughout his life in the post-war world. His emotional detachment from dangerous situations made him ideally suited for work with unstable compounds and complex detonation systems, but it also created barriers to normal human relationships that had left him isolated. Despite his obvious value to any group requiring demolition expertise, Dan's background in explosives work had begun during his youth in a settlement that specialized in mining operations, where his steady hands and nerveless temperament made him valuable for handling the dangerous chemicals and improvised devices that were necessary for extracting useful materials from contaminated or heavily fortified locations. His natural aptitude for understanding chemical reactions and mechanical systems had been refined through years of practical experience with explosives ranging from simple grenades to complex demolition charges. The psychological traits that made Dan so effective with explosives were also the source of his social difficulties and personal struggles. His inability to experience normal emotional responses to danger meant that situations which would terrify or excite other people left him feeling nothing at all, his nervous system apparently incapable of generating the adrenaline responses that most humans took for granted. This condition made him incredibly valuable in combat situations, but also left him feeling disconnected from experiences that gave life meaning for other people. Dan's recruitment to Abel's revolutionary movement was motivated by intellectual rather than emotional considerations. His decision to join based on logical analysis of his options, rather than passionate commitment to the cause. The Brotherhood's expansion threatened to eliminate the independent settlements where his services were valued, while their technological superiority made traditional mining and salvage operations increasingly difficult. Revolution offered the best chance for preserving a way of life that had provided him with purpose and identity. But Dan's involvement with the resistance gradually awakened emotional responses that his condition had previously suppressed. His exposure to the suffering of others and the camaraderie of shared danger, creating feelings that he had not experienced since childhood. The explosives expert, who had once approached every situation with clinical detachment, began to develop genuine attachments to his fellow revolutionaries, an authentic commitment to their shared goals. His emotional awakening was slow and sometimes painful, but it represented a form of healing that had seemed impossible before he found people who valued him for more than just his technical skills. Dan's tactical role within the revolutionary organization was defined by his expertise in demolitions and his ability to remain functional under the most stressful conditions. His preferred targets were infrastructure installations that supported Brotherhood operations, power plants, communication facilities, supply depots, and transportation networks, whose destruction would degrade enemy capabilities while avoiding unnecessary casualties among civilian populations. His approach to sabotage emphasized precision and timing over raw destructive power. The equipment that Dan used reflected his preference for elegant solutions over brute force applications. His primary tools were carefully crafted explosive devices that could be precisely controlled for maximum effect with minimum collateral damage. He carried an assortment of timers, remote detonators, and chemical compounds that could be combined to create custom charges suited for specific tactical requirements. His knowledge of structural engineering allowed him to identify the critical points where small amounts of explosive could achieve disproportionately large effect. Dan's teaching responsibilities within the revolutionary movement included training other resistance members in basic demolition techniques and explosive safety procedures. His instruction methods were characterized by extreme attention to detail and an almost obsessive focus on preventing accidents that could kill students or compromise operations. His students learned not just how to build and deploy explosive devices, but how to maintain the mental discipline necessary for working with dangerous materials under combat conditions. The psychological complexity that characterized Dan's inner life was largely hidden from his fellow revolutionaries. His outward calm, masking a constant struggle to understand and process emotions that had been suppressed for most of his adult life. His growing attachment to the cause and his comrades represented a fundamental change in his psychological makeup, the development of feelings and relationships that gave his life meaning beyond the technical satisfaction of successful demolitions. Dan's interactions with other team members were marked by his gradual emergence from emotional isolation into something approaching normal human relationships. His respect for Abel was based on appreciation for the strategic thinking that made their operations possible, while his admiration for Betty reflected recognition of her courage in fighting for principles despite overwhelming odds. His friendship with Caleb was perhaps the most natural, based on mutual understanding of what it meant to be defined by technical expertise, while longing for human connection. The revolutionary movement that these four individuals would have represented in Fallout Extreme was conceived as something fundamentally different from the traditional resistance organizations that appeared in other post-war narratives. Rather than simply opposing oppression for its own sake, the cause was intended to offer a positive vision of what post-nuclear society could become if freed from the technological authoritarianism that the Brotherhood represented. Their struggle was not just against tyranny, but for the possibility of genuine democracy in a world that had forgotten what freedom meant. The strategic approach that Abel would have developed for the revolutionary campaign emphasized the importance of winning popular support rather than simply inflicting military damage on Brotherhood forces. Each liberated community would have been required to demonstrate its commitment to the cause's principles before receiving full support and protection, ensuring that the revolution created lasting change, rather than merely replacing one form of oppression with another. The movement's success would have been measured not just by territory gained, but by the establishment of self-governing communities capable of maintaining their independence. The military tactics that the revolutionaries employed would have been characterized by asymmetric warfare techniques designed to exploit the Brotherhood's technological advantages against them. Rather than engaging in direct confrontations where superior equipment would determine outcomes, the resistance would have focused on sabotage, infiltration, and psychological operations that undermined enemy morale, while demonstrating the possibility of successful opposition. Each victory would have served multiple purposes, weakening Brotherhood capabilities while inspiring further resistance. The character development arcs planned for each team member would have explored themes of personal growth, moral responsibility, and the transformative power of shared struggle against overwhelming odds. Abel's journey from loyal soldier to revolutionary leader would have examined the psychological costs of betraying deeply held beliefs in service of higher principles. Betty's evolution from persecuted minority to respected leader would have demonstrated the possibility of overcoming prejudice through courage and competence. Caleb's transformation from mercenary individualist to committed team player would have illustrated how personal excellence could be channeled toward collective goals without sacrificing individual identity. Dan's emergence from emotional isolation into human connection would have provided a compelling narrative about healing and growth, even in the context of violent conflict. Together, their stories would have created a complex portrait of how ordinary people could become heroes when circumstances demanded extraordinary responses to injustice. The broader implications of their struggle would have extended far beyond the immediate tactical objectives of liberating territory from Brotherhood control. Their success or failure would have determined whether the post-nuclear world would evolve toward genuine democracy and human dignity, or succumb to the technological totalitarianism that seemed to offer security at the cost of freedom. The revolution they led was not just about military victory, but about preserving the possibility that human beings could govern themselves according to principles of justice and mutual respect. The loss of Fallout Extreme from the gaming landscape represents more than just the cancellation of another post-apocalyptic shooter. It eliminated the possibility of exploring alternative interpretations of the Brotherhood of Steel that would have challenged player assumptions about heroism, technology, and the proper relationship between advanced capabilities and moral responsibilities. The game would have forced players to confront uncomfortable questions about whether protective organizations could maintain their virtue indefinitely, or whether power inevitably corrupts even the most well-intentioned institutions. The stories of Abel, Big Betty, Caleb, and Uber Dan exist now only in the realm of speculation and imagination, their adventures forever frozen at the moment when corporate decisions terminated their potential existence. But their conceptual legacy continues to influence discussions about the nature of resistance, the possibility of meaningful change, and the courage required to stand against oppression when victory seems impossible. They remain symbols of hope for anyone who has ever wondered whether individual action can make a difference in the face of seemingly insurmountable systemic problems. In the quiet moments before sleep, when consciousness begins to dissolve into the realm of dreams and possibilities, these four revolutionaries continue their eternal campaign against the forces of oppression and technological tyranny. Their struggle reminds us that freedom is never given but must always be earned through sacrifice and struggle, that justice requires constant vigilance against those who would trade liberty for security, and that hope endures even when victory seems impossible. The darkness that enveloped Tibbet's prison on that fateful night in the year 2003 was not merely the absence of light, but the presence of something far more profound. The weight of untold stories and abandoned dreams that would forever remain locked within walls that existed only in the imagination of developers whose vision was terminated before it could reach the world. Within those conceptual walls, a prisoner whose name was never chosen and whose face was never drawn was destined to awaken into a mystery that would have redefined everything players thought they understood about choice, consequence, and the nature of identity in the post-nuclear world. The cell in which this unnamed protagonist would have first opened their eyes was not the same cell in which they had fallen asleep the night before, though the realization of this displacement would have come gradually as consciousness returned, and the familiar details of their previous confinement failed to match the reality surrounding them. The walls were the wrong color, the bars positioned differently, the quality of light filtering through the small window, suggesting an orientation that contradicted their memory. of where their original cell had been located within the prison complex. This fundamental discontinuity between expectation and reality would have served as the perfect introduction to Van Buren's central themes of identity, memory, and the unreliable nature of perceived truth in a world where nothing could be taken for granted. The prisoners' confusion about their location was intended to mirror the players' uncertainty about the character they were inhabiting, both protagonist and participant, beginning their journey with questions that had no immediate answers and assumptions that would prove dangerously incorrect. The explosion that shattered the night's silence and the prisoners' contemplation was not merely a plot device to facilitate escape, but a symbolic representation of the violent disruption that characterized all meaningful change. In the post-nuclear world, the concussive force that knocked the prisoner unconscious served as a metaphysical threshold between their old existence as a passive victim of circumstance and their new reality as an active agent capable of shaping their own destiny through the choices they would make in the wasteland beyond the prison walls. When consciousness returned, the prisoner would have found themselves facing the most fundamental choice in all of interactive entertainment: the decision of who they were and who they wished to become. The hole in the wall created by the mysterious explosion offered more than just physical escape from confinement. It represented the possibility of escape from the limitations of predetermined identity, the chance to define oneself through actions, rather than being defined by the circumstances that had led to imprisonment. The moral choice that Van Buren offered its players was elegantly simple in concept, but profoundly complex in its implications. The prisoner could choose to be innocent, maintaining that their incarceration had been the result of some terrible misunderstanding or deliberate injustice that had robbed them of freedom they had never deserved to lose. Alternatively, they could embrace their criminal nature, acknowledging that they belonged in prison, and gaining mechanical advantages from the skills and knowledge that a life of crime would have provided. The innocent path would have been characterized by a fundamental sense of injustice and a burning desire for vindication that would have shaped every interaction with the wasteland's inhabitants and factions. This prisoner would have approached the post-nuclear world with the moral clarity of someone who had never chosen to harm others, whose understanding of right and wrong remained unclouded by personal guilt or the rationalizations that criminals use to justify their actions. Their quest would have been not just for survival, but for the restoration of their good name and the punishment of those responsible for their wrongful imprisonment. The psychological profile of an innocent prisoner would have been defined by their ability to maintain hope and dignity despite prolonged injustice, their refusal to allow circumstances beyond their control to corrupt their fundamental decency. This character would have possessed an intuitive understanding of right and wrong that made them naturally sympathetic to other victims of injustice, while inspiring them to oppose those who used power to exploit the vulnerable. Their moral compass would have remained true regardless of the harsh realities they encountered in the wasteland. But the innocent prisoner's greatest strength would also have been their greatest vulnerability. Their faith in justice and their expectation that good behavior would be rewarded could have made them naive about the realities of post-nuclear politics, where survival often required moral compromises that a truly innocent person would find difficult to accept. Their unwillingness to employ the ruthless tactics that characterized wasteland survival could have created situations where their principles became liabilities rather than assets. The interactions between an innocent prisoner and the various factions struggling for power in the post-war world would have been shaped by their ability to see through the rationalizations and propaganda that powerful groups used to justify their actions. Their perspective as someone who had been victimized by institutional injustice would have made them naturally suspicious of any organization that claimed moral authority while employing questionable methods. They would have been drawn to groups that genuinely served the common good while remaining skeptical of those whose actions contradicted their stated principles. The criminal path offered an entirely different approach to post-nuclear survival, one characterized by pragmatic acceptance of harsh realities and a willingness to employ any methods necessary to achieve desired objectives. This prisoner would have acknowledged their guilt while using their criminal experience to navigate a world where legal and moral constraints had largely ceased to exist. Their understanding of how power actually worked in human societies would have made them effective at manipulating wasteland politics to their advantage. The bonus traits available to criminal prisoners would have reflected the practical skills that a life outside the law would have provided. Improved combat abilities gained through violent encounters, enhanced social manipulation techniques learned through confidence schemes and criminal negotiations, and specialized knowledge about security systems, black market operations, and other aspects of society that law-abiding citizens rarely encountered. These advantages would have been balanced by the moral compromises and trust issues that criminal activity inevitably created. The psychological makeup of a criminal prisoner would have been far more complex than simple evil or selfishness. Their willingness to break laws and social conventions could have stemmed from desperation, ideology, or simply a realistic understanding that survival sometimes required actions that violated abstract moral principles. Their criminal background would not have predetermined their choices in the wasteland, but would have provided them with different tools and perspectives for approaching the challenges they encountered. The most intriguing aspect of the criminal path would have been its potential for redemption, the possibility that someone who had chosen to harm others in the past could learn from their experiences and become a force for good in the post-nuclear world. This character arc would have explored whether criminal behavior was an immutable aspect of personality or simply a response to circumstances that could change when better options became available. The relationship between criminal prisoners and wasteland factions would have been characterized by mutual understanding of how power and violence actually functioned in human societies. Criminal characters would have been naturally suited for working with morally ambiguous organizations that employed questionable methods in service of arguably legitimate goals. They would have understood that good intentions were worthless without the practical capabilities necessary to implement beneficial changes. The symbolic significance of wearing a Vault 13 jumpsuit would have added layers of meaning to both innocent and criminal prisoner narratives, creating connections to the broader Fallout mythology, while raising questions about identity, belonging, and the relationship between individual choice and social expectations. The prisoner who donned that distinctive blue and yellow uniform was not just escaping from confinement, but assuming the identity of someone who had played a crucial role in shaping the post-war world. The decision to change the prisoner's number from 114 to 13 was more than mere aesthetic consistency with existing Fallout lore. It represented a conscious choice by the development team to connect their new protagonist to the legacy of the original Vault Dweller, while maintaining enough ambiguity to preserve player agency in defining their character's relationship to that legacy. The number 13 carried with it expectations and assumptions that would have affected how NPCs reacted to the prisoner throughout their journey. The psychological impact of wearing another person's identity would have been profound for both innocent and criminal prisoners, though it would have affected them in different ways. An innocent prisoner might have felt uncomfortable assuming the identity of someone whose history they did not know, worried about being held responsible for actions they had not taken or commitments they had not made. A criminal prisoner might have seen the jumpsuit as the perfect cover story, a way to gain trust and access that their true identity would never have provided. The practical implications of the Vault 13 connection would have extended throughout Van Buren's narrative, affecting everything from initial NPC reactions to late-game revelation scenes. Communities that remembered the original Vault dwellers' heroism would have been more likely to trust and assist someone wearing their uniform, while factions that had been harmed by Vault dweller actions might have reacted with suspicion or hostility. The jumpsuit would have been both passport and target, opening doors while creating dangers. The world beyond Tibbet's prison that the prisoner would have explored represented the cutting edge of post-apocalyptic world design, featuring locations and concepts that pushed the boundaries of what players expected from Fallout environments. Boulder Dome would have served as a centerpiece location, where pre-war scientific ambitions had created wonders and horrors in equal measure, its gleaming exterior hiding secrets that would have challenged everything players thought they understood about the relationship between technology and human nature. The various factions competing for power in Van Buren's version of the American Southwest would have represented different approaches to rebuilding civilization, each offering compelling arguments for why their particular vision of the future deserved support. The prisoners' interactions with these groups would have been shaped by their chosen background and the moral framework that resulted from their decision to embrace innocence or acknowledge criminality. The New California Republic's expansion eastward would have brought with it the promise of democratic governance and the rule of law, appealing to innocent prisoners who valued justice and institutional accountability. But the Republic's bureaucratic inefficiencies and tendency toward corruption would have created opportunities for criminal prisoners who understood how to work within flawed systems to achieve their objectives. The prisoners' relationship with the NCR would have depended as much on their ability to navigate political complexities as on their moral alignment with democratic principles. The Brotherhood of Steel's presence in the region would have represented the appeal of technological solutions to post-war problems, their advanced equipment and disciplined organization, offering stability in exchange for submission to their particular vision of human progress. Innocent prisoners might have been attracted to the Brotherhood's stated mission of preserving knowledge and protecting civilization, while criminal prisoners would have recognized the opportunities that existed within any rigid hierarchy for those clever enough to exploit systematic weaknesses. The tribal communities that had emerged in areas too harsh or remote for more organized factions would have offered alternative models for human organization based on traditional values and intimate connection to local environments. These groups would have appealed to prisoners who had grown distrustful of complex institutions, providing examples of how humans could live in harmony with post-nuclear conditions without sacrificing essential aspects of their humanity. The merchant networks that connected isolated communities would have represented the entrepreneurial spirit that had always characterized American culture, their focus on trade and mutual benefit, offering alternatives to the military and political solutions favored by larger factions. Prisoners with criminal backgrounds would have found natural allies among traders who understood that survival sometimes required bending rules, while innocent prisoners would have appreciated communities that judged people by their contributions rather than their past mistakes. The religious and ideological movements that had emerged from humanity's struggle to find meaning in a world that seemed abandoned by any benevolent deity would have provided frameworks for understanding, suffering, and hope that appealed to different aspects of the prisoner's psychological makeup. These groups would have offered both sanctuary and purpose to characters struggling with questions about redemption, justice, and the possibility of positive change in seemingly hopeless circumstances. The environmental challenges that the prisoner would have faced during their exploration of Van Buren's world would have been more complex and varied than anything previously seen in Fallout games, reflecting the developers' intention to create a truly alien landscape where familiar survival strategies might prove inadequate or dangerous. The radiation storms, mutant ecology, and unstable terrain would have required players to develop new approaches to exploration and resource management. The The technological mysteries hidden throughout the game world would have rewarded players who chose to investigate the remnants of pre-war scientific projects, revealing both the incredible achievements and the terrible mistakes that had shaped the post-nuclear environment. These discoveries would have been particularly meaningful for prisoners whose backgrounds provided them with the knowledge necessary to understand and potentially exploit advanced technologies. The personal relationships that the prisoner could have developed with NPCs throughout their journey would have been shaped by their chosen background and the trust issues that resulted from their prison experience. Innocent prisoners would have been naturally inclined to form genuine friendships based on shared values and mutual respect, while criminal prisoners would have approached relationships more strategically, evaluating potential allies based on their usefulness rather than their personal appeal. The companion characters that would have joined the prisoner's party would have represented different aspects of post-war society, each bringing unique perspectives and capabilities that complemented the player character's chosen approach to wasteland survival. These relationships would have evolved based on the prisoner's actions and decisions, with some companions growing closer while others became alienated by choices that contradicted their own moral frameworks. The romantic possibilities that Van Buren would have offered would have been influenced by the prisoner's background and the trust issues that imprisonment had created. Innocent prisoners might have struggled with self-worth issues that made intimate relationships difficult, while criminal prisoners might have had difficulty believing that others could love them despite knowledge of their past actions. The development of romantic relationships would have required players to confront questions about honesty, forgiveness, and the possibility of genuine connection between people whose pasts contained secrets and regrets. The ultimate resolution of the prisoner's story would have depended not just on their chosen background, but on the decisions they made throughout their journey, the relationships they formed, and the values they chose to embrace or abandon. The game's ending would have been determined by whether the prisoner had grown beyond their past limitations or remained trapped by the circumstances that had originally led to their imprisonment. The tragic cancellation of Van Buren eliminated one of the most psychologically complex protagonists ever conceived for a video game. A character whose very existence would have challenged players to think deeply about identity, choice, and the possibility of redemption in a world that seemed designed to punish hope and reward cynicism. The prisoner's story would have demonstrated that heroism could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, and that even those who had lost everything could still choose to become forces for positive change. In the quiet darkness where cancelled games rest alongside abandoned dreams and forgotten possibilities, the prisoner of Van Buren continues to serve their sentence in a cell that exists only in imagination. But their story reminds us that freedom is not just about physical escape from confinement, but about the choices we make when faced with opportunities to define ourselves through our actions rather than our circumstances. The mystery of who the prisoner was and who they might have become remains forever unsolved, a question mark in the grand narrative of post-nuclear America that challenges us to consider our own potential for growth and change when confronted with seemingly impossible circumstances. In the realm of dreams where all stories continue their eternal existence, the prisoner finally escapes their cell and begins the journey toward discovery, redemption, and the possibility that even the darkest past can be transformed into a foundation for hope. The year 2004 brought with it the promise of redemption for a franchise that had stumbled badly with its previous entry, as developers at Interplay prepared to craft a sequel to Fallout Brotherhood of Steel that would restore the series' reputation while exploring new corners of the post-nuclear American landscape. The state of Texas, with its vast expanses of irradiated desert and proud traditions of independence, seemed the perfect setting for a story about warriors struggling to maintain their honor in a world that had forgotten the meaning of heroism. Among these intended champions was Lilith, a hot-tempered marksman whose journey from reckless recruit to seasoned warrior would have exemplified the transformative power of discipline imposed upon raw talent. Born into the rigid hierarchy of the Brotherhood of Steel during the chaotic years following the Great War, Lilith had never known a world outside the organization's militaristic structure, her entire existence shaped by the codes of conduct and tactical doctrines that governed life within humanity's self-appointed technological guardians. Her parents had been among the Brotherhood's founding members. Their dedication to the organization's mission of preserving pre-war knowledge, creating a family culture where service to the cause took precedence over personal desires or individual expression. The Brotherhood compound where Lilith spent her formative years was a fortress of steel and discipline, its corridors echoing with the sounds of combat training and technical instruction that prepared each new generation of initiates for the challenges they would face in the radioactive wasteland beyond the protective walls. From her earliest memories, Lilith had been surrounded by the symbols and rituals of military excellence. The Brotherhood's emphasis on technological superiority and tactical precision, creating an environment where personal worth was measured by one's ability to contribute to the organization's collective mission. But Lilith's natural temperament had always been at odds with the emotional control that Brotherhood doctrine demanded of its members. Where other children learned to channel their energy into productive activities like technical study or physical conditioning, Lilith's passionate nature expressed itself through outbursts of temper that disrupted training sessions and created tensions within the carefully maintained social order that kept the Brotherhood functioning as a cohesive military unit. Her childhood had been marked by a series of incidents that demonstrated both her potential for excellence and her tendency toward insubordination when faced with restrictions that seemed to limit her ability to express her natural capabilities. The training weapons that shattered in her hands during moments of frustration, the instructors who found themselves subjected to verbal challenges when their methods failed to match her learning style, the fellow initiates who learned to avoid her during periods when her temper was particularly volatile. All these became part of Lilith's reputation within the Brotherhood's internal community. The marksmanship abilities that would eventually make Lilith valuable to the Brotherhood, despite her behavioral problems, had manifested early in her development. Her natural hand-eye coordination and instinctive understanding of ballistics, making her exceptional with ranged weapons from the moment she was old enough to hold a rifle safely. Her accuracy with firearms was not simply the result of practice and instruction, but represented an almost supernatural talent that seemed to operate below the level of conscious thought. The instructors who worked with Lilith during her weapons training found themselves dealing with a student whose capabilities exceeded their ability to provide meaningful guidance. Her intuitive grasp of marksmanship principles, making formal instructions seem redundant and occasionally counterproductive. She could compensate for wind, elevation, and target movement through adjustments that appeared to be pure instinct rather than calculated responses to environmental factors. Her shooting technique defied conventional wisdom while producing results that silenced critics who might otherwise have questioned her unorthodox methods. But Lilith's exceptional accuracy came packaged with a personality that made her difficult to integrate into the Brotherhood's command structure and tactical formations. Her impatience with slower learners created friction during group training exercises. Her tendency to show off her abilities undermined unit cohesion, and her quick temper made her unsuitable for operations requiring patience and stealth. The same passionate intensity that fueled her marksmanship excellence also made her a disruptive force within an organization that prized discipline above individual brilliance. The relationship between Lilith and the Brotherhood's elder leadership was characterized by mutual frustration and reluctant recognition of necessity. The elders understood that her abilities with ranged weapons made her too valuable to dismiss or punish severely, but they also recognized that her behavioral problems could undermine the authority structure that held the Brotherhood together during times of crisis. Their solution was to provide her with increased autonomy and specialized assignments that allowed her to contribute without disrupting the activities of more conventional soldiers. The specialized role that evolved around Lilith's unique combination of exceptional ability and problematic temperament involved assignments that required precision marksmanship under challenging conditions where other soldiers might have failed to achieve necessary results. She became the Brotherhood's solution to problems that required surgical application of firepower, her missions typically involving the elimination of specific targets or the destruction of precise objectives in circumstances where collateral damage was unacceptable. These assignments allowed Lilith to develop her skills further while providing her with the independence she craved. But they also isolated her from the camaraderie and mutual support that sustained other Brotherhood members through the psychological challenges of military service in the post-war world. Her success in completing difficult missions earned her respect from superiors and peers, but the solitary nature of her work prevented her from forming the close relationships that might have helped moderate her more destructive impulses. The equipment that was specially issued to Lilith reflected both the Brotherhood's recognition of her exceptional abilities and their understanding of what would be required to maximize her effectiveness in the field. Her primary weapon was a custom-modified sniper rifle that had been adjusted to accommodate her particular shooting style and preferences. Its scope and firing mechanisms calibrated to take advantage of her natural accuracy, while compensating for the minor technical flaws that characterized her unorthodox technique. The ammunition that Lilith preferred was selected for maximum precision rather than raw stopping power, her philosophy being that perfect shot placement made overwhelming firepower unnecessary and potentially counterproductive. She carried an assortment of specialty rounds designed for specific tactical situations: armor-piercing bullets for heavily protected targets, incendiary rounds for equipment destruction, and subsonic ammunition for stealth operations where muzzle flash and noise discipline were critical for mission success. Her secondary weapons reflected the Brotherhood's understanding that even the most skilled marksman needed backup options for situations where long-range precision fire was impractical or impossible. She carried a modified pistol for close-quarters combat and a tactical knife for silent elimination of sentries or other situations requiring hand-to-hand engagement. But these weapons were clearly secondary to her primary role as a precision shooter. Their selection based more on reliability and ease of maintenance than on raw combat effectiveness. The tactical doctrine that governed Lilith's employment in Brotherhood operations emphasized the importance of positioning and patience, her missions typically requiring extensive preparation and careful coordination with other elements of larger military actions. Her role was to provide overwatch for advancing units, eliminate key enemy personnel before they could organize effective resistance, and destroy critical equipment or installations that could not be approached safely through conventional assault methods. But the psychological isolation that resulted from her specialized role began to affect Lilith's mental stability and emotional development in ways that concerned Brotherhood leadership and created additional challenges for managing her integration into the organization's broader military structure. The solitary nature of precision shooting, combined with her natural tendency toward emotional intensity, created a feedback loop that amplified both her combat effectiveness and her social dysfunction. The kills that Lilith accumulated during her service with the Brotherhood were not just tactical victories but psychological burdens that she processed through her own unique emotional framework. Unlike soldiers who could share the moral weight of combat deaths with their comrades, Lilith's isolated position meant that each of her successful engagements was a solitary act for which she bore complete personal responsibility. The precision that made her so effective also made each death more personal and immediate than the casualties inflicted through conventional military action. The relationship between Lilith and her targets became increasingly complex as her experience with precision killing accumulated over months and years of specialized operations. Her exceptional accuracy meant that she could observe the results of her shots in detail that was impossible for conventional soldiers, her scope providing intimate views of the human cost of her military effectiveness. This proximity to the consequences of her actions created psychological pressures that the Brotherhood's standard counseling and support systems were not designed to address. The coping mechanisms that Lilith developed to manage the emotional stress of her role involved channeling her natural intensity into ritualistic behaviors and obsessive attention to equipment maintenance and tactical preparation. She became known for spending hours cleaning and adjusting her weapons, checking and rechecking her gear, and rehearsing mission scenarios with an attention to detail that exceeded even the Brotherhood's demanding standards for military preparation. These behaviors served multiple psychological functions, providing her with a sense of control over circumstances that were inherently chaotic and unpredictable, while also creating structured activities that occupied her mind during periods when the isolation of her position might otherwise have led to destructive introspection. Her equipment became not just tools for accomplishing missions, but tangible connections to her identity as a Brotherhood warrior and her value to the organization that had shaped her entire existence. The theoretical character development arc that would have been available to players choosing Lilith as their protagonist in Brotherhood of Steel 2 would have centered on her gradual evolution from a talented but undisciplined individual into a mature leader capable of channeling her abilities in service of larger principles and collective goals. This transformation would have required her to confront both her personal demons and the broader questions about the Brotherhood's role in post-war society that challenged all thoughtful members of the organization. The early missions in Lilith's story arc would have been designed to demonstrate both her exceptional combat abilities and the problems created by her impulsive nature and difficulty working with others. Players would have experienced firsthand the advantages of having such a skilled marksman available, while also dealing with the complications that resulted from her tendency to act independently and her conflicts with authority figures who tried to impose tactical constraints that she found restrictive or counterproductive. The middle portion of Lilith's narrative would have involved her gradual recognition that individual excellence, while valuable, was insufficient for achieving the larger objectives that gave meaning to Brotherhood operations. The enemies that threatened post-war civilization could not be defeated through individual heroics, but required coordinated action by disciplined military units whose members trusted each other completely and functioned as integrated components of larger tactical systems. This realization would have created internal conflict for Lilith as she struggled to balance her natural independence with the demands of military teamwork and collective action. The process of learning to subordinate her personal preferences to mission requirements and unit cohesion would have been painful and difficult, requiring her to develop emotional control and social skills that had been neglected during her years of specialized solitary operations. The climactic challenges in Lilith's story would have tested whether she had successfully integrated her exceptional individual abilities with the discipline and teamwork that effective military leadership required. Her ultimate success or failure as a protagonist would have depended not just on her marksmanship skills, but on her ability to inspire and coordinate other fighters, while maintaining the moral clarity necessary to distinguish between legitimate military objectives and the kind of violence that served only personal, emotional needs. The relationships that Lilith would have developed with other protagonists and supporting characters in Brotherhood of Steel 2 would have been shaped by her gradual evolution from isolated specialist to integrated team member and potential leader. Her interactions with more conventional Brotherhood soldiers would have illustrated the challenges of building trust and mutual respect between individuals whose approaches to military service differed significantly. Her potential romantic relationships would have been complicated by her emotional intensity and the psychological barriers that resulted from years of isolation and specialized combat assignments. Learning to form intimate connections with other people would have required her to develop vulnerability and trust that seemed inconsistent with the emotional armor she had constructed to protect herself from the psychological costs of her military role. The mentorship relationships that might have developed between Lilith and younger Brotherhood members would have provided opportunities for her to process her own experiences by helping others avoid the mistakes that had made her path to maturity so difficult and painful. Teaching others would have forced her to articulate the lessons she had learned through experience, while also accepting responsibility for the development and welfare of individuals whose success would depend on her guidance and support. The broader themes that Lilith's story would have explored included the tension between individual excellence and collective action, the psychological costs of specialization in violence, and the possibility of personal redemption through service to principles larger than individual self-interest. Her narrative arc would have demonstrated that even the most difficult and troubled individuals could find meaning and purpose through commitment to worthy causes and the development of genuine relationships with others who shared their values and objectives. The loss of Lilith's story from the Fallout universe represents more than just the cancellation of another video game character. It eliminated the opportunity to explore complex questions about military culture, the psychology of combat specialists, and the personal costs of excellence in fields where individual achievement was measured in terms of successful violence. Her potential narrative would have challenged players to consider whether exceptional ability created special obligations, and whether personal fulfillment was possible for individuals whose talents were primarily destructive. The Brotherhood of Steel that might have been, with Lilith as one of its champions, would have been an organization capable of acknowledging its members' human frailties, while still maintaining the discipline and effectiveness necessary for protecting civilization from the forces that threatened its recovery. Her presence would have demonstrated that military excellence and personal growth were not mutually exclusive, that the same intensity that could destroy relationships could also forge bonds strong enough to sustain individuals through the greatest challenges. The fascination with fire that would define Rhombus throughout his life within the Brotherhood of Steel began during his earliest childhood memories, when the controlled flames that provided heat and light in the organization's underground facilities seemed to him like living creatures with personalities and intentions that could be understood through careful observation and patient study. Unlike other children who viewed fire as simply another tool or environmental factor, young Rhombus saw in dancing flames a language of movement and color that spoke to something deep within his developing consciousness, awakening interests that would shape his entire approach to understanding the physical world. Born into the Brotherhood during the tumultuous years when the organization was still defining its mission and establishing the cultural traditions that would guide future generations, Rhombus grew up surrounded by the artifacts and technologies that represented humanity's greatest achievements and most terrible mistakes. His parents were both technical specialists whose work involved maintaining the complex systems that kept Brotherhood facilities operational. Their expertise in engineering and electronics, providing him with early exposure to the principles of mechanical design and electrical theory that would later inform his understanding of how destructive devices functioned. The Brotherhood compound where Rhombus spent his formative years was a testament to the organization's commitment to preserving and advancing human knowledge. Its workshops and laboratories filled with equipment that had been salvaged from pre-war facilities, or constructed using techniques that combined traditional craftsmanship with cutting-edge scientific principles. The sounds of machinery in operation, the smells of metal being worked and chemicals being mixed, the visual spectacle of sparks flying from welding torches and electricity arcing between conductors. All these sensory experiences combined to create an environment where technical curiosity was not just encouraged, but essential for survival. But among all the wonders that surrounded him during his childhood, it was fire that captured Rhombus's imagination most completely, its behavior seeming to follow rules that were both predictable and mysterious, its applications ranging from the purely practical to the almost magical. He would spend hours watching the flames in heating units and cooking facilities, noting how they responded to changes in fuel supply and airflow, developing an intuitive understanding of combustion principles that preceded and often exceeded formal instruction in chemistry and physics. The nickname that eventually attached itself to Rhombus reflected both his physical appearance and his personality quirks. The combination of his compact stature and distinctive facial hair, creating a memorable image that fellow Brotherhood members found both amusing and slightly endearing. His short neck and beatnik-style goatee gave him an appearance that seemed to belong more in a pre-war coffee shop than a post-apocalyptic military organization. But his technical competence and enthusiastic dedication to his work quickly earned him respect, despite his unconventional appearance. The mechanical aptitude that Rhombus displayed from an early age was characterized not just by his ability to understand how complex systems functioned, but by his gift for taking them apart and reassembling them in ways that improved their performance or adapted them for purposes their original designers had never intended. This talent for deconstruction and reconstruction became the foundation for his later specialization in explosive devices, his understanding of how things could be taken apart, violently being informed by his knowledge of how they had been put together originally. The evolution of Rhombus's interests from general mechanical work to specific focus on demolitions and explosives was a gradual process that reflected both his natural talents and the Brotherhood's recognition of where his abilities could be most effectively employed. His fascination with fire naturally led to curiosity about other forms of rapid energy release, his studies of combustion expanding to include the chemical reactions that powered more violent and destructive processes. The Research and Development Division, where Rhombus eventually found his professional home, was the Brotherhood's Center for Innovation and Experimentation, where the organization's most creative minds worked to develop new applications for recovered technology and to solve the technical challenges that arose from operating advanced equipment in post-war conditions. The work performed in these facilities required individuals who could think creatively about technical problems while maintaining the safety discipline necessary to avoid catastrophic accidents. Rhombus's contribution to the Brotherhood's research efforts was characterized by his unique ability to see explosive and incendiary devices, not merely as weapons, but as precision tools capable of achieving specific objectives, with minimal waste of energy and materials. His approach to demolitions work emphasized elegance and efficiency over raw, destructive power, his designs reflecting an artist's sensibility applied to the science of controlled destruction. The theoretical work that occupied much of Rhombus's time involved developing new explosive compounds from materials that were available in the post-war environment, his chemistry knowledge allowing him to create effective devices using ingredients that could be scavenged or synthesized rather than requiring pre-war military ordnance that was becoming increasingly scarce. His innovations in improvised explosives made the Brotherhood less dependent on dwindling stockpiles of conventional munitions, while providing them with tools that could be customized for specific tactical requirements. But Rhombus's most significant contribution to Brotherhood capabilities was his development of precision demolition techniques that allowed military units to destroy specific targets while minimizing collateral damage to surrounding structures and personnel. His understanding of structural engineering principles, combined with his expertise in explosive placement and timing, made it possible to achieve tactical objectives through surgical application of force rather than overwhelming destruction. The workshops where Rhombus conducted his research were marvels of organized chaos, filled with partially assembled devices, chemical samples, technical drawings, and testing apparatus that reflected his systematic approach to understanding the principles that governed explosive reactions. His work areas were simultaneously laboratories and art studios, places where scientific inquiry merged with creative expression to produce innovations that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. The safety protocols that Rhombus developed and insisted upon reflected his understanding that working with dangerous materials required not just technical knowledge, but psychological discipline and unwavering attention to detail. His laboratories were models of proper safety procedure, their organization and cleanliness, reflecting his belief that respect for the destructive forces he worked with was essential for avoiding accidents that could kill him and his assistants while destroying months of research progress. The relationship between Rhombus and fire evolved throughout his career from simple fascination to sophisticated technical mastery. His understanding of combustion and explosive reactions eventually reaching levels that allowed him to predict and control outcomes with remarkable precision. But his emotional connection to flame and destruction remained as strong as it had been during his childhood, his work providing him with opportunities to explore and express aspects of his personality that conventional military roles would have left unfulfilled. The recall to active duty that interrupted Rhombus's research career was motivated by the Brotherhood's recognition that his specialized skills would be essential for the military operations that growing tensions with the new California Republic seemed likely to require. His transition from laboratory researcher to field operative represented a significant change in both his daily routine and his psychological relationship to his work, transforming explosive devices from objects of scientific interest into tools for achieving tactical objectives in life or death situations. The equipment that Rhombus was issued for field operations reflected both his specialized knowledge and the Brotherhood's understanding of what would be required to maximize his effectiveness in combat situations. His primary tools were not weapons in the conventional sense, but rather instruments for precise application of explosive force, their design reflecting years of research into the most effective methods for destroying specific types of targets under various operational conditions. The explosive devices that Rhombus preferred were characterized by their versatility and precision rather than their raw destructive power, his philosophy being that the right amount of explosive in exactly the right place could achieve results that required much larger quantities of less precisely applied destructive force. His toolkit included shaped charges for penetrating armor, breaching charges for opening entrances through walls and barriers, and demolition charges for destroying bridges, buildings, and other infrastructure targets. The detonation systems that Rhombus employed reflected his understanding that timing and coordination were as important as explosive power for achieving successful demolitions. His preferred triggers included both timer-based and remote-controlled devices their selection for specific missions being based on tactical requirements and the need to ensure that explosions occurred at precisely the right moments to achieve maximum effectiveness while minimizing risks to friendly forces. But perhaps most importantly, Rhombus carried with him the knowledge and experience that allowed him to improvise effective explosive devices from materials that were available in field conditions. His understanding of chemistry and engineering, enabling him to create custom solutions to tactical problems that had not been anticipated during mission planning. This capability made him invaluable for operations where conventional equipment was insufficient or unavailable. The psychological transition that Rhombus experienced as he moved from research to combat operations was complex and sometimes difficult, requiring him to reconcile his scholarly approach to explosive devices with the immediate tactical demands of military action. The devices that had once been subjects of scientific investigation became tools for killing enemy soldiers and destroying their equipment, their application shifting from theoretical to intensely practical and personal. The first missions that Rhombus undertook as a field operative were designed to ease his transition from laboratory to battlefield while testing his ability to apply his specialized knowledge under combat conditions. These assignments involved relatively straightforward demolition tasks where his technical expertise could be employed without requiring him to engage in direct combat or make split-second tactical decisions under enemy fire. The success of these initial field operations demonstrated that Rhombus's technical skills could be effectively translated into tactical capabilities, his understanding of explosive principles allowing him to achieve mission objectives with efficiency and precision that impressed both his superiors and his fellow soldiers. His reputation as someone who could solve problems through creative application of controlled destruction began to spread throughout Brotherhood military units. But the increasing complexity of assignments that followed his early successes required Rhombus to develop not just technical proficiency, but the psychological resilience necessary for operating in combat environments where mistakes could result in the deaths of his teammates and the failure of critical missions. The scholarly detachment that had served him well in research settings became a liability in situations where emotional investment and personal commitment were essential for optimal performance. The coping mechanisms that Rhombus developed for managing the stress of combat operations involved channeling his natural fascination with destructive processes into systematic analysis of tactical problems and methodical preparation of equipment and procedures. His approach to mission planning became almost ritualistic, involving exhaustive consideration of variables and contingencies that helped him maintain confidence in his ability to control outcomes through superior preparation. The relationships that Rhombus formed with other Brotherhood soldiers were shaped by their recognition of his specialized value and their understanding that his unique skills made him worthy of protection and support during operations. His technical expertise earned him respect from colleagues who might otherwise have been skeptical of someone whose appearance and personality differed so markedly from conventional military stereotypes. The theoretical character development arc that would have been available to players choosing Rhombus as their protagonist would have centered on his evolution from a technically competent but socially isolated specialist into a mature leader capable of integrating his unique abilities with the broader strategic objectives of Brotherhood military operations. This transformation would have required him to develop not just tactical proficiency, but the interpersonal skills necessary for coordinating complex operations involving multiple team members. The early missions in Rhombus's story would have been designed to demonstrate both his exceptional technical abilities and the challenges he faced in adapting his research-focused mindset to the immediate demands of combat operations. Players would have experienced the advantages of having such specialized knowledge available, while also dealing with the complications that resulted from his tendency toward perfectionism and his difficulty making rapid decisions under pressure. The middle portion of Rhombus's narrative would have involved his gradual recognition that technical excellence, while valuable, needed to be balanced with tactical flexibility and responsiveness to changing battlefield conditions. The enemies that threatened Brotherhood objectives could not always be defeated through carefully planned demolitions, but sometimes required improvised solutions that prioritized speed and adaptability over perfect optimization of explosive effects. The climactic challenges in Rhombus's story would have tested whether he had successfully integrated his technical expertise with the leadership skills and tactical judgment that effective military command required. His ultimate success as a protagonist would have depended not just on his ability to design and deploy explosive devices, but on his capacity to inspire confidence in other soldiers and make difficult decisions under the pressure of combat conditions. The relationships that Rhombus would have developed with other protagonists in Brotherhood of Steel 2 would have been shaped by his unique combination of technical expertise and personal eccentricity, his specialized knowledge making him valuable to the team, while his personality quirks created both opportunities for humor and sources of interpersonal tension. His interactions with more conventional soldiers would have illustrated the challenges of integrating specialists into military units that valued conformity and predictability. The potential romantic relationships in Rhombus's story would have been complicated by his intense focus on technical interests and his difficulty relating to people who did not share his fascination with mechanical and chemical processes. Learning to form intimate connections would have required him to develop emotional intelligence and communication skills that his specialized career had not demanded, while also finding partners who could appreciate his unique perspective and passionate dedication to his work. The mentorship opportunities that might have emerged from Rhombus's story would have involved his teaching other Brotherhood members about demolitions and explosives, while also learning from more experienced soldiers about tactical, leadership, and military psychology. These relationships would have provided him with opportunities to share his technical knowledge, while gaining insights into the broader aspects of military service that his research focus had caused him to overlook. The moral and ethical dimensions of Rhombus's character arc would have explored the tension between his scholarly fascination with destructive processes and his growing understanding of the human costs of violence in military operations. His development as a character would have required him to reconcile his intellectual interest in explosives with the moral responsibility that came from using such knowledge to achieve objectives that had life or death consequences for both enemies and allies. The broader themes that Rhombus's story would have examined included the relationship between technical expertise and military effectiveness, the challenges of translating theoretical knowledge into practical applications, and the personal costs of specialization in fields where individual achievement was measured in terms of destructive capability. His narrative would have demonstrated that even the most technically proficient individuals needed to develop broader perspectives and interpersonal skills to achieve their full potential as military leaders. The loss of Rhombus's story from the Fallout universe represents the elimination of a unique perspective on the relationship between scientific curiosity and military necessity, between technical innovation and tactical application. His character would have provided players with opportunities to explore complex questions about the ethics of weapons development and the psychological challenges faced by individuals whose specialized knowledge made them valuable, but also isolated them from more conventional forms of human experience. The Brotherhood of Steel that might have included Rhombus as one of its champions would have been an organization capable of combining technological innovation with tactical flexibility, its operations enhanced by specialists who could adapt their unique knowledge to changing circumstances while maintaining their commitment to the organization's broader mission of protecting and advancing human civilization. The afternoon sun filtered through the reinforced windows of the Brotherhood of Steel recruiting station in New California, casting long shadows across the floor, where a 17-year-old boy named Maxis stood transfixed by the gleaming power armor that dominated the facility's main display area. The massive suit of technological marvel represented everything that had drawn him to this moment. The promise of belonging to something greater than himself, the opportunity to wield weapons that could reshape the post-nuclear landscape, and most importantly, the chance to follow in the footsteps of a father whose legendary status within the Brotherhood had created both inspiration and intimidation for a young man struggling to define his own identity. Cyrus had been more than just Maxis's father. He had been one of the Brotherhood's most respected paladins during the organization's formative years, his name spoken with reverence in the halls, where military doctrine was debated and tactical innovations were developed. The stories of his courage and tactical brilliance had shaped Maxis's understanding of what it meant to be a warrior, creating expectations and aspirations that had guided every decision the young man had made since childhood. But they had also created a burden of legacy that sometimes threatened to overwhelm his developing sense of individual identity and personal worth. The physical resemblance between father and son was so striking that Brotherhood veterans who had served with Cyrus often did double takes when encountering Maxis for the first time, their memories of the legendary paladin momentarily confused by the appearance of someone who seemed to be his younger duplicate. The same strong jawline, the same piercing eyes, the same way of standing that suggested both confidence and readiness for immediate action. All the genetic markers that had made Cyrus such an imposing figure had been passed down to his son with remarkable fidelity, but the similarities extended beyond mere physical appearance to encompass personality traits and instinctive responses that suggested something deeper than simple heredity at work. Maxis possessed the same natural leadership qualities that had made his father so effective as a military commander, the same ability to remain calm under pressure and make decisive choices when circumstances demanded immediate action. His tactical thinking followed patterns that were remarkably similar to those that had made Cyrus famous within Brotherhood military circles. The childhood that Maxis had experienced in the shadow of his father's reputation was characterized by constant reminders of the standard he was expected to meet and potentially exceed. Every achievement was measured against Cyrus's legendary accomplishments, every failure examined for signs that he might not possess the qualities necessary to uphold the family's honor within the Brotherhood's warrior culture. The pressure to live up to his father's legacy had been both motivating and paralyzing, inspiring him to excellence, while also creating anxiety about whether he could ever truly measure up to such an imposing example. The decision to join the Brotherhood of Steel had been inevitable from Maxis's earliest memories, his entire upbringing having been designed to prepare him for the moment when he would formally commit himself to the organization that had defined his father's life and given meaning to his family's existence. But the encounter with the paladin who finally convinced him to take the formal steps toward enlistment represented more than just institutional recruitment. It was a moment of recognition that his destiny lay with the advanced weapons and noble principles that the Brotherhood represented. The paladin, who served as Maxis's introduction to formal Brotherhood service, was a veteran of the same conflicts that had made his father famous. Someone who had fought alongside Cyrus and witnessed firsthand the courage and tactical brilliance that had made him legendary within the organization. This personal connection created a bridge between Maxis's civilian upbringing and his military future, providing him with insights into his father's character and achievements that went beyond the official stories that had shaped his childhood understanding. The recruitment process that Maxis underwent was complicated by the Brotherhood's awareness of who his father had been, and what that legacy meant for their expectations of his potential contribution to the organization. Some leaders saw him as likely to become another exceptional warrior whose genetic inheritance and cultural preparation would make him a valuable asset from the beginning of his service. Others worried that the pressure of living up to his father's reputation might create psychological problems that would interfere with his development as an effective soldier. The initial training that Maxis experienced within Brotherhood facilities was characterized by constant comparisons to his father's performance in similar situations. His instructors unable to resist evaluating his progress against the standard that Cyrus had established decades earlier. These comparisons were sometimes encouraging when Maxis demonstrated abilities that matched or exceeded his father's early achievements, but they could also be discouraging when his performance fell short of the impossible standard that legendary status had created. The weapon specialization that Maxis developed during his Brotherhood training reflected both his personal preferences and his understanding of what would be required to distinguish himself within an organization that valued technological proficiency above almost all other considerations. His lack of interest in small guns was not based on any inability to use such weapons effectively, but rather on his recognition that larger, more powerful armaments offered opportunities to make more significant contributions to Brotherhood operations. The fascination that Maxis developed for heavy weapons was rooted in his understanding that the Brotherhood's technological advantages were most clearly demonstrated through equipment that exceeded the capabilities of wasteland opponents by overwhelming margins rather than subtle degrees. The massive guns that filled the organization's armories represented the culmination of pre-war military engineering, their destructive potential making them symbols of everything that the Brotherhood stood for in terms of preserving and applying advanced technology. The psychological appeal of heavy weapons for someone in Maxis's position was complex and multifaceted, involving not just their impressive destructive capabilities, but also their symbolic value as representations of the technological superiority that justified the Brotherhood's self-appointed role as guardians of civilization. Wielding such weapons provided him with a sense of connection to the organization's mission that went beyond mere military effectiveness to encompass deeper questions about identity and purpose. The training regimen that Maxis underwent to master heavy weapon systems was characterized by both technical instruction in the mechanical operation of complex equipment and tactical education in the strategic principles that governed their effective employment in combat situations. His natural aptitude for understanding mechanical systems made the technical aspects of his education relatively straightforward, but learning to think tactically about when and how to employ such powerful weapons required more sophisticated instruction. The relationship between Maxis and his instructors was complicated by their knowledge of his father's achievements and their understanding of the psychological pressures that such a legacy created for a young recruit trying to establish his own identity within the Brotherhood's military culture. Some instructors pushed him harder than they would have pushed other recruits, believing that his genetic inheritance and family background created obligations to achieve excellence that exceeded normal expectations. Others treated him with special consideration, recognizing that unrealistic expectations could be as harmful as insufficient challenge. The field exercises that formed an essential part of Maxis's training provided opportunities to apply his developing skills with heavy weapons in simulated combat conditions that tested not just his technical proficiency, but his ability to function effectively as part of larger tactical formations. These exercises revealed both his natural talents and the areas where additional development would be necessary before he could be considered ready for actual combat operations. The psychological development that Maxis experienced during his Brotherhood training involved not just learning military skills but also coming to terms with his relationship to his father's legacy and his own ambitions within the organization. The process of establishing his individual identity while honoring family tradition required careful navigation of competing demands and expectations that sometimes seemed impossible to reconcile satisfactorily. The camaraderie that developed between Maxis and his fellow recruits was influenced by their awareness of his family background and their uncertainty about whether his presence among them represented an advantage or a complication for their own advancement within Brotherhood hierarchy. Some recruits sought to align themselves with him, hoping that association with Cyrus's son might provide benefits for their own careers. Others maintained distance, worried that competition with someone who possessed such obvious advantages might damage their prospects for success. The theoretical character development arc that would have been available to players choosing Maxis as their protagonist would have centered on his evolution from a young man defined primarily by his father's achievements into a mature leader whose own accomplishments established him as worthy of respect in his own right. This transformation would have required him to honor his family's legacy while also developing his individual talents and perspectives in ways that went beyond simple imitation of his father's approach to military service. The early missions in Maxis's story would have been designed to test his ability to apply his training in real combat situations while also exploring his psychological relationship to his father's reputation and the expectations that such a legacy created. Players would have experienced both the advantages of having access to advanced equipment and training and the complications that resulted from being constantly measured against impossible standards of performance and behavior. The middle portion of Maxis's narrative would have involved his gradual recognition that effective leadership required more than just technical proficiency with weapon systems or even tactical competence in combat situations. The challenges facing the Brotherhood in post-war America could not be solved through military action alone, but required political sophistication, moral clarity, and the ability to inspire others to commit themselves to objectives that transcended personal interest or individual survival. The climactic challenges in Maxis's story would have tested whether he had successfully developed his own leadership philosophy and tactical approach, rather than simply copying his father's methods and perspectives. His ultimate success as a protagonist would have depended on his ability to demonstrate that he had learned from Cyrus's example, while also developing innovations and insights that reflected his own experience and understanding of Brotherhood needs and objectives. The relationships that Maxis would have developed with other protagonists in Brotherhood of Steel 2 would have been shaped by his unique position as someone whose family background provided him with advantages and insights that were not available to other characters, while also creating expectations and pressures that complicated his ability to form genuine friendships based on mutual respect rather than strategic calculation or inherited reputation. The potential romantic relationships in Maxis's story would have been influenced by questions about whether partners were attracted to him as an individual or to his status as the son of a legendary paladin. His relationships, complicated by uncertainty about motives and authenticity that reflected the broader challenges of establishing individual identity within the context of overwhelming family legacy. The mentorship dynamics that might have emerged from Maxis's narrative would have involved his learning from Brotherhood veterans who had known his father, while also developing his own approach to training and leading younger recruits who looked to him for guidance and example. These relationships would have provided opportunities to explore questions about tradition and innovation, about honoring the past while adapting to changing circumstances and new challenges. The moral and ethical dimensions of Maxis's character development would have centered on his understanding of what it meant to inherit both the privileges and responsibilities that came with his family's reputation within the Brotherhood, his growth as a character, requiring him to develop his own moral framework while respecting the principles that had guided his father's legendary career. The broader themes that Maxis's story would have explored included the relationship between individual identity and family legacy, the challenges of meeting expectations while developing personal authenticity, and the ways in which inherited advantages could become either stepping stones to genuine achievement or barriers to individual growth and self-discovery. His narrative would have demonstrated that even the most privileged backgrounds created their own forms of challenge and pressure. The heavy weapons expertise that Maxis would have developed throughout his story would have been more than just a military specialization, but a symbol of his commitment to the Brotherhood's technological mission and his understanding of the responsibility that came with wielding such destructive power. His relationship with these weapons would have evolved from initial fascination through technical mastery to mature understanding of their proper role in achieving Brotherhood objectives. The tactical philosophy that Maxis would have developed around the employment of heavy weapons would have reflected his understanding that such equipment represented both opportunity and responsibility, their impressive capabilities requiring wisdom and restraint in their application to avoid causing unnecessary destruction or undermining the Brotherhood's broader mission of protecting and advancing human civilization. The leadership challenges that Maxis would have faced as his story progressed would have required him to balance the aggressive employment of overwhelming firepower with the political and moral considerations that governed Brotherhood operations in territories where civilian populations might be affected by military actions. His development as a commander would have been measured not just by his tactical success, but by his ability to achieve objectives while maintaining the organization's reputation for principled behavior. The relationship between Maxis and his father's memory would have evolved throughout his story from initial intimidation and anxiety about living up to impossible standards to mature appreciation of the principles and values that had made Cyrus legendary. His character development involving the integration of inherited wisdom with personal experience and individual insight. The connection between past and future that Maxis represented within Brotherhood culture would have been symbolically important for an organization that defined itself through its relationship to both pre-war technology and post-war responsibility, his story serving as a bridge between the legendary founding generation and the emerging leaders who would guide the Brotherhood through future challenges. The loss of Maxis's story from the Fallout universe represents the elimination of a unique exploration of legacy, inheritance, and the challenges of establishing individual identity within the context of overwhelming family tradition. His character would have provided players with opportunities to examine questions about heredity and environment, about the relationship between genetic inheritance and personal choice, and about the ways in which family reputation could both enable and constrain individual development. The Brotherhood of Steel that might have included Maxis among its champions would have been an organization capable of honoring its founding principles while adapting to changing circumstances. Its leadership enhanced by individuals who understood that tradition and innovation were not opposing forces but complementary aspects of effective institutional development. The desert wind carried with it the scent of death and abandonment as it swept across the wasteland where a newborn child had been left to die, her pale skin and colorless hair marking her as different in ways that her community could not accept or understand. The year was unknown, lost in the chaos of post-war record-keeping, but the cruelty was timeless. The same rejection of difference that had plagued human societies since the beginning of civilization, now amplified by the desperation and fear that characterized life in the nuclear aftermath. This child, who would eventually be known as Scarlet, began her existence not with the love and protection that should greet every new life, but with the harsh lesson that survival in the post-war world demanded more than just the will to live. Her albinism was complete and striking, a genetic condition that had rendered her skin pale as moonlight and her hair white as fresh snow, creating an appearance that seemed almost supernatural in its deviation from normal human pigmentation. In the pre-war world, such a condition might have been seen as unique or even beautiful, but in the desperate communities struggling to survive in radioactive wastelands, difference was often interpreted as danger, and anything that seemed unnatural was assumed to be connected to the mutations and contaminations that threatened everyone's survival. The community that had rejected her was typical of the small settlements that had emerged in the decades following the Great War, its population consisting of perhaps 50 individuals who had banded together for mutual protection and shared resources in a region where isolated families rarely survived more than a few seasons. These people were not inherently evil, but they were terrified. Terrified of radiation, terrified of raiders, terrified of starvation, and perhaps most of all, terrified of anything that might bring additional danger to their fragile existence. The decision to abandon the albino child had not been made lightly or with malicious intent, but rather through the desperate logic of people who believed that their community's survival depended on avoiding anything that might be seen as cursed or contaminated. Her unusual appearance, so different from anything they had encountered before, triggered superstitions and fears that had been amplified by the strange mutations and inexplicable phenomena that characterized the post-nuclear environment. They convinced themselves that leaving her in the desert was a mercy, that death would come quickly and spare her the suffering that such obvious difference would bring in a world that had little tolerance for the unusual or the vulnerable. But fate, or perhaps simply the random chance that governed all survival in the wasteland, had other plans for the abandoned child. Harold, the wandering mutant whose own transformation had made him an exile from normal human society, discovered her before the desert could claim another victim of human fear and ignorance. The irony was profound. The child rejected by normal humans for her difference was rescued by someone whose own mutations had made him even more obviously alien, yet whose retained humanity made him capable of the compassion that her own species had denied her. Harold's decision to rescue and adopt the albino child was motivated by more than simple kindness, though kindness was certainly part of his motivation. His own experience as someone whose appearance marked him as fundamentally different from normal humans had given him intimate understanding of what it meant to be judged and rejected based on physical characteristics that were beyond personal control. His transformation from human to mutant had been gradual and involuntary, but it had taught him lessons about acceptance and compassion that many unchanged humans never learned. The early years of Scarlett's life with Harold were characterized by constant travel through the wasteland, her adoptive father's wandering nature, making it impossible for them to settle in any single location for extended periods. This nomadic existence exposed her to a broader range of post-war environments and communities than most children ever experienced. Her understanding of the wasteland's diversity and dangers being shaped by first-hand observation, rather than the limited perspectives that characterized more settled populations. Harold's storytelling became one of the defining elements of Scarlett's education and emotional development, his tales of adventure and survival, providing her with both entertainment and instruction in the realities of post-nuclear existence. But among all his stories, those that featured the legendary Vault Dweller held special significance, representing examples of heroism and moral courage that served as counterbalances to the cruelty and selfishness that seemed to characterize so much of wasteland life. The stories Harold told about his adventures with the Vault Dweller were not just entertainment but educational tools that taught Scarlett about the possibilities for positive change and heroic action that existed even in the harsh realities of the post-war world. These tales demonstrated that individuals could make differences in the lives of others, that courage and determination could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles, and that moral principles could be maintained even when circumstances seemed to justify abandoning them. But Harold's stories also revealed the complex nature of heroism in the post-nuclear world, where good intentions did not always lead to positive outcomes, and where even the most well-meaning actions could have unintended consequences that caused suffering for innocent people. His nuanced portrayal of the Vault Dwellers' adventures taught Scarlett that moral choices were rarely simple or clear-cut, that heroism often required accepting responsibility for difficult decisions that had no perfect solutions. The relationship that developed between Harold and Scarlett was characterized by genuine affection and mutual dependence, their bond transcending the biological relationships that normally defined family structures. Harold found in Scarlett someone who could see past his mutated appearance to the person he remained underneath, while she found in him the acceptance and protection that her birth community had been unable to provide. As Scarlett grew older, her unique appearance became both an asset and a liability in their travels through the wasteland. Her pale skin and white hair made her memorable to everyone they encountered, creating opportunities for recognition and connection, but also making it impossible for her to blend into crowds or avoid unwanted attention when circumstances required discretion. Her striking appearance often served as an icebreaker in social situations, but it also marked her as unusual in ways that could be dangerous in communities where difference was viewed with suspicion. The skills that Scarlett developed during her years of travel with Harold were practical and diverse, reflecting the broad range of challenges that characterized nomadic life in the post-war wasteland. She learned to identify edible plants and safe water sources, to recognize the signs of radiation, contamination, and dangerous weather patterns, and to assess the relative threats and opportunities presented by different types of settlements and traveling groups. But more importantly, Scarlett developed the social and psychological skills necessary for interacting with the diverse range of people they encountered during their travels. Her ability to read human nature and adapt her behavior to different situations becoming one of her most valuable survival tools. Her experience with Harold had taught her that appearances could be deceiving, that moral worth was not determined by physical characteristics, and that genuine human connections could transcend the superficial differences that often divided wasteland communities. The decision to leave Harold and join the Brotherhood of Steel was one of the most difficult that Scarlett had ever faced, requiring her to balance her loyalty and affection for her adoptive father against her growing desire to find a place where she could belong to something larger than their two-person family unit. The Brotherhood represented the possibility of structure, purpose, and belonging that their nomadic existence could not provide, but it also meant abandoning the person who had saved her life and given her the love and acceptance that made survival worthwhile. Harold's reaction to Scarlett's decision reflected his understanding that their relationship had always been intended to prepare her for independence rather than to create permanent dependence on his protection and guidance. His support for her choice to join the Brotherhood was motivated by his recognition that she had outgrown what their traveling partnership could offer, that her potential could only be fully realized through engagement with larger organizations and more complex challenges than their wandering lifestyle provided. The initial attraction that the Brotherhood held for Scarlett was rooted in her understanding of their reputation as protectors of civilization and preservers of knowledge, their stated mission appealing to someone who had been raised on stories of heroism and moral courage. But her decision to join was also motivated by more personal considerations. the desire to belong to a community that valued her contributions rather than focusing on her appearance, and the opportunity to develop skills and capabilities that would enable her to make positive differences in the world. The recruitment process that Scarlett underwent revealed both her exceptional capabilities and the psychological complexity that made her unsuitable for conventional Brotherhood roles. Her intelligence and adaptability impressed the organization's leadership, but her moral ambiguity, the result of growing up in an environment where survival often required actions that contradicted traditional ethical principles, created concerns about her reliability in situations where clear moral choices were required. The psychological evaluation that determined Scarlett's assignment to the Brotherhood's Special Operations Division was based on recognition that her unique background and perspective made her ideally suited for missions that required moral flexibility and the ability to operate effectively in environments where conventional Brotherhood approaches would be ineffective or counterproductive. Her lack of conventional moral constraints was seen not as a deficiency, but as a qualification for work that demanded pragmatic decision-making, unencumbered by idealistic limitations. The special operations training that Scarlett received was designed to develop her natural talents for stealth and precision combat, while also providing her with the technical knowledge and tactical skills necessary for independent operations in hostile territory. Her instruction emphasized adaptability and improvisation over rigid adherence to doctrine, recognizing that the missions she would undertake would often require creative solutions to unprecedented challenges. The stealth techniques that became Scarlett's specialty were based on more than just physical skills or technological equipment, though both were important components of her training. Her ability to remain undetected was rooted in her understanding of human psychology and her talent for manipulating perceptions, her unusual appearance actually becoming an asset when properly employed as a tool for misdirection and confusion. The sniper training that transformed Scarlett into one of the Brotherhood's most effective long-range specialists was characterized by emphasis on precision and patience rather than volume of fire or rapid target engagement. Her preferred approach to eliminating targets involved extensive preparation and careful positioning, her shots planned and executed with surgical precision that minimized the risk of collateral damage while maximizing psychological impact on enemy forces. The weapons that Scarlett preferred reflected her philosophy of precision over power, her equipment selected for accuracy and reliability, rather than intimidation or overwhelming destructive capability. Her primary rifle was a heavily modified sniper system that had been customized for her specific requirements and shooting style, its scope and firing mechanisms adjusted through countless hours of practice and refinement to achieve the level of accuracy that her mission requirements demanded. But Scarlett's most valuable asset was not her marksmanship or her stealth capabilities, but her ability to infiltrate and manipulate target organizations through the application of social skills that had been refined through years of adapting to different communities and situations. Her unusual appearance, rather than being a liability, became a tool for creating memorable impressions and establishing the kinds of personal connections that could be exploited for intelligence gathering and operational access. The psychological profile that Scarlett presented to Brotherhood leadership was complex and sometimes contradictory, her surface charm and apparent vulnerability masking depths of calculation and moral flexibility that made her both valuable and potentially dangerous. Her willingness to employ whatever methods were necessary to accomplish mission objectives was seen as an asset for special operations work, but it also created concerns about her long-term loyalty and the possibility that her pragmatic approach to ethics might eventually be turned against the Brotherhood itself. The early missions that Scarlet undertook for the Brotherhood's Special Operations Division were designed to test her capabilities while also evaluating her psychological stability and loyalty under the stress of real combat operations. These assignments involved infiltration of hostile organizations, elimination of specific targets, and intelligence gathering in environments where discovery would have meant certain death and possible compromise of larger Brotherhood operations. The success of these initial missions established Scarlet's reputation as someone who could accomplish objectives that were beyond the reach of conventional Brotherhood operatives. Her unique combination of skills and psychological traits making her ideally suited for work that required both technical proficiency and moral flexibility. Her mission reports were models of tactical efficiency, detailing successful completion of assigned objectives with minimal resource expenditure and collateral damage. But the psychological cost of her special operations work began to accumulate over months and years of missions that required her to suppress or compartmentalize the emotional responses that characterized normal human reactions to violence and deception. The stealth kills that were her specialty created psychological barriers between herself and the targets she eliminated, her scope providing enough distance to minimize the personal impact of taking human lives while still requiring her to accept responsibility for deaths that served Brotherhood's strategic objectives. The isolation that resulted from Scarlet's specialized role within the Brotherhood was both professional and personal, her work requiring secrecy that prevented her from forming the kinds of relationships that sustained other organization members through the challenges of military service. Her colleagues knew her by reputation rather than personal acquaintance, her legendary skills creating respect and admiration that was balanced by wariness about someone whose capabilities made her potentially as dangerous to friends as to enemies. The revenge fantasy that had sustained Scarlet through her early years with the Brotherhood gradually evolved from simple desire for retribution against the community that had abandoned her into a more complex psychological framework that encompassed broader questions about justice, belonging, and the nature of human worth. Her initial plans for returning to destroy the settlement that had rejected her became symbols for larger themes about the relationship between individual value and social acceptance. The moral transformation that Scarlet experienced as her special operations career progressed was characterized by the gradual recognition that the skills and perspectives that made her effective as an assassin also isolated her from the kinds of human connections that gave life meaning beyond mere survival and mission accomplishment. Her success in completing assigned objectives was balanced by growing awareness that her professional achievements were creating personal costs that might ultimately prove unbearable. The theoretical character development arc that would have been available to players choosing Scarlet as their protagonist would have centered on her evolution from someone driven primarily by revenge and personal validation into a mature leader whose understanding of justice and human worth transcended the narrow perspectives that had shaped her early psychological development. This transformation would have required her to confront both her past traumas and her current moral limitations while developing genuine relationships that provided alternatives to the isolation that had characterized her adult life. The early missions in Scarlet's story would have been designed to demonstrate both her exceptional capabilities as a special operations soldier and the psychological barriers that prevented her from forming meaningful relationships with other Brotherhood members. Players would have experienced the advantages of having such specialized skills available while also dealing with the social and emotional costs that resulted from her reputation and the secretive nature of her work. The middle portion of Scarlet's narrative would have involved her gradual recognition that personal revenge and professional success were insufficient foundations for a meaningful life, that genuine fulfillment required connections with other people and commitment to principles that transcended individual satisfaction or organizational objectives. The process of learning to trust others and accept vulnerability would have been difficult and sometimes painful, requiring her to overcome psychological defenses that had been essential for survival but were now obstacles to growth. The climactic challenges in Scarlett's story would have tested whether she had successfully integrated her specialized skills with the emotional intelligence and moral clarity necessary for effective leadership in situations that required more than tactical proficiency. Her ultimate success as a protagonist would have depended on her ability to inspire trust and loyalty in other people, while maintaining the operational effectiveness that made her valuable to the Brotherhood's mission. The relationships that Scarlett would have developed with other protagonists in Brotherhood of Steel 2 would have been shaped by her unique background and the psychological barriers that resulted from years of specialized training and isolated operations. Her interactions with more conventional soldiers would have illustrated the challenges of building trust and mutual respect between individuals whose approaches to military service and personal relationships differed significantly. The potential romantic relationships in Scarlett's story would have been complicated by her difficulty trusting others and her uncertainty about whether people were attracted to her as an individual or to her reputation as a legendary operative whose skills made her both fascinating and dangerous. Learning to form intimate connections would have required her to develop emotional vulnerability and authentic communication that seemed inconsistent with the psychological armor she had constructed to protect herself from the costs of her professional activities. The mentorship opportunities that might have emerged from Scarlett's narrative would have involved her teaching other Brotherhood members about stealth and assassination techniques, while also learning from more experienced leaders about the broader aspects of military service and organizational leadership that her specialized focus had caused her to neglect. These relationships would have provided opportunities for her to process her own experiences while helping others avoid the isolation and moral confusion that had made her path to maturity so difficult. The loss of Scarlett's story from the Fallout universe represents the elimination of a unique exploration of themes related to abandonment, adoption, revenge, and the possibility of redemption through service to causes larger than personal grievance. Her character would have provided players with opportunities to examine complex questions about the relationship between individual worth and social acceptance, about the psychological costs of specialization in violence, and about the possibility of finding meaning and connection despite backgrounds that seem to preclude normal human relationships. The Brotherhood of Steel that might have included Scarlett among its champions would have been an organization capable of recognizing that its most effective operatives might also be its most psychologically complex members. Its leadership enhanced by individuals who understood that specialized skills often came with personal costs that required institutional support and understanding. The corridors of time stretch endlessly through the realm of possibilities, filled with the echoes of stories that were never told, and heroes who never drew breath beyond the conceptual drawings that preserved their potential existence. In this liminal space between imagination and reality, the lost narratives of cancelled Fallout games continue their eternal dance, their unfinished symphonies, playing melodies that speak to what might have been if corporate decisions had not severed the threads connecting creative vision to interactive reality. Fallout Extreme's alternative history represents perhaps the most radical reimagining of post-nuclear America ever conceived within the franchise's development cycle. Its vision of a corrupted Brotherhood of Steel, transforming beloved protectors into oppressive conquerors, challenging everything that players thought they understood about heroism, technology, and the proper relationship between advanced capabilities and moral responsibilities. This was not mere contrarian storytelling, but a sophisticated exploration of how noble institutions could lose their way when power corrupted their founding principles and isolation bred contempt for those they had sworn to protect. The Brotherhood's transformation in Fallout Extreme was intended to be gradual and believable, rooted in the same human weaknesses that had destroyed the pre-war world and created the conditions that made their protective mission necessary. The organization's evolution from preservers of knowledge to hoarders of power would have been depicted not as sudden moral collapse, but as the inevitable result of unchecked authority combined with technological superiority that made resistance seem futile and compromise unnecessary. The systematic expansion that characterized the Brotherhood's conquest of the Pacific Northwest would have been portrayed as a logical extension of their protective mandate, their leadership convincing themselves that true security required absolute control over all potentially threatening technologies and populations. Their methods would have become increasingly authoritarian, as opposition to their rule demonstrated that voluntary cooperation was insufficient for achieving the comprehensive order that their vision of civilization demanded. The enslavement and conscription policies that transformed the Brotherhood from protectors into oppressors would have been justified through elaborate ideological frameworks that portrayed such measures as necessary sacrifices for the greater good of humanity's long-term survival and advancement. The propaganda that supported these policies would have depicted Brotherhood rule not as tyranny, but as enlightened guidance provided by superior beings who understood technological and social realities that ordinary humans were incapable of comprehending. The genocide campaign directed against mutant populations would have represented the Brotherhood's complete abandonment of their original humanitarian principles. Their decision to eliminate entire categories of sentient beings based on genetic deviation, revealing how completely power had corrupted their understanding of what it meant to protect and preserve human civilization. These extermination policies would have been implemented with the same technological efficiency that characterized all Brotherhood operations, their advanced weapons making resistance futile and escape nearly impossible. The resistance movement that opposed this corrupted Brotherhood would have been portrayed not as simple rebels against authority, but as the true heirs to the organization's founding principles, their struggle representing an attempt to restore the values that had been abandoned by those who claimed to embody them. The revolution led by Abel and his companions would have been fundamentally conservative in its objectives, seeking to return the Brotherhood to its original mission rather than replacing it with something entirely new. The strategic approach that would have characterized the revolutionary campaign was designed to emphasize the moral dimensions of their struggle, rather than simply focusing on military objectives or territorial gains. Each liberated community would have been required to demonstrate its commitment to the principles of freedom and human dignity that the revolution sought to establish, ensuring that their victory would create lasting change, rather than merely replacing one form of oppression with another. The tactical innovations that would have been necessary for defeating the Brotherhood's technological advantages would have emphasized asymmetric warfare techniques that exploited the organization's dependence on complex equipment and centralized command structures. The revolutionaries would have learned to turn the Brotherhood's greatest strengths against them, using their technological sophistication as a vulnerability that could be exploited through careful planning and coordinated action. Van Buren's deeper mysteries were intended to explore themes of identity, memory, and moral responsibility that went far beyond the surface narrative of the prisoner's escape and subsequent adventures in the post-nuclear wasteland. The game's central conceit, that the player character's true identity and past actions remained ambiguous throughout most of the narrative, was designed to force players to confront fundamental questions about the relationship between personal history and moral worth. The significance of Tibbet's prison in Van Buren's narrative extended beyond its function as the player character's starting location to encompass broader themes about justice, punishment, and the possibility of redemption in a world where legal and moral frameworks had largely collapsed. The prison served as a microcosm of post-war society, its population representing the full spectrum of human responses to catastrophic social breakdown. The explosion that freed the prisoner was intended to be more than a convenient plot device, its mysterious origins and timing suggesting connections to larger conspiracies and power struggles that would have been gradually revealed as the player explored the surrounding region. The identity of those responsible for creating the opportunity for escape would have provided crucial insights into the factions and individuals whose actions shaped the broader narrative. The various factions competing for influence in Van Buren's version of the American Southwest would have represented different philosophical approaches to rebuilding civilization, each offering compelling arguments for why their particular vision of the future deserved support from communities and individuals seeking stability and purpose in the post-war world. The prisoners' interactions with these groups would have been shaped not only by their mechanical benefits but by their moral implications and long-term consequences. The new California Republic's eastern expansion would have been portrayed as both opportunity and threat, their democratic ideals and institutional experience offering the possibility of legitimate governance, while their bureaucratic inefficiencies and expansionist ambitions created risks for local communities that valued independence, traditional ways of life. The prisoner's relationship with the NCR would have been complicated by questions about whether democratic institutions could function effectively in post-war conditions. The Brotherhood of Steel's presence in the region would have represented the appeal of technological solutions balanced against the dangers of elitist authoritarianism, their advanced capabilities and disciplined organization providing security and stability, while their isolation from civilian populations and contempt for democratic processes created long-term threats to human autonomy and dignity. The tribal communities that maintained traditional lifestyles in areas unsuited for more complex forms of organization would have offered examples of sustainable post-war adaptation that contrasted with the resource-intensive approaches favored by more technologically advanced factions. These groups would have demonstrated that human communities could thrive without surrendering their essential humanity to the demands of technological efficiency or institutional complexity. The environmental storytelling that would have characterized Van Buren's world design was intended to create a landscape where every location contained clues about the pre-war events and post-war developments that had shaped the region's current condition. The ruins of scientific facilities, abandoned military installations, and failed settlement attempts would have provided players with opportunities to piece together the complex historical narrative that explained their present circumstances. Boulder Dome would have served as the centerpiece of Van Buren's exploration of the relationship between scientific ambition and moral responsibility, its gleaming exterior hiding secrets that challenged everything players thought they understood about the causes of the Great War and the possibilities for post-war recovery. The facility's research programs would have revealed both the incredible achievements and the terrible mistakes that had characterized pre-war scientific culture. The connections between Van Buren's narrative and the broader Fallout mythology would have been carefully constructed to enhance rather than contradict the established lore, the game's revelations providing new perspectives on familiar events, while introducing entirely new elements that expanded the franchise's thematic range and geographical scope. The prisoner's journey would have intersected with the consequences of actions taken by previous protagonists, while creating new possibilities for future narratives. Brotherhood of Steel 2's Texas expansion was intended to explore the organization's adaptation to regional conditions and cultural traditions that differed significantly from their California origins. Their encounter with local populations and competing factions, creating opportunities for character development and thematic exploration that would have added new dimensions to the franchise's portrayal of post-war military culture. The integration of Caesar's Legion elements into Brotherhood of Steel 2's narrative would have demonstrated the developers' intention to create connections between different Fallout games, while also exploring the ideological conflicts that arose when militaristic organizations with different philosophical foundations encountered each other in contested territories. The collision between Brotherhood technology and Legion discipline would have created dramatic tensions that enhanced both organizations' narrative significance. The irradiated gecko mutations that would have appeared in Brotherhood of Steel 2 represented the continuing evolution of post-war ecology, their presence demonstrating that the biological effects of nuclear warfare were still unfolding decades after the initial catastrophe. These creatures would have served not only as combat encounters, but as environmental storytelling elements that illustrated the ongoing transformation of the natural world. The tactical challenges that would have been created by fighting mutated wildlife would have required players to develop new strategies and equipment loadouts, the game's combat system being designed to reward adaptability and creative problem-solving rather than relying on conventional approaches that might prove inadequate when facing creatures whose abilities exceeded normal biological limitations. The character interactions that would have developed between the four Brotherhood initiates would have been designed to explore different aspects of military culture and personal development, their individual backgrounds and specializations, creating opportunities for both cooperation and conflict. As they learn to function as an integrated team while maintaining their distinct identities and approaches to problem-solving. The moral ambiguity that characterized many of Van Buren's narrative elements was intended to force players to make difficult choices without clear right or wrong answers. The game's ethical framework being designed to reward thoughtful consideration of consequences rather than adherence to simple moral rules that might not apply in post-war conditions where survival often required compromising idealistic principles. The technological mysteries that would have been scattered throughout all three cancelled games represented the developers' intention to maintain the sense of wonder and discovery that had characterized the original Fallout, while also introducing new elements that expanded the franchise's scientific and technological possibilities. These discoveries would have provided both practical benefits for gameplay and conceptual frameworks for understanding the relationship between knowledge and responsibility. The loss of these narrative possibilities represents more than just the cancellation of individual games, but the elimination of entire thematic territories that might have been explored through interactive media, their absence from the gaming landscape, creating gaps in the cultural conversation about technology, authority, and human nature that their successful completion might have filled. The alternative timelines that these cancelled games would have created or explored demonstrate the importance of creative diversity in storytelling, their different approaches to familiar themes and settings, showing how the same fundamental concepts could be examined from multiple perspectives to create entirely different insights and emotional experiences for audiences seeking meaning and entertainment. The character archetypes that were developed for these games but never fully realized continue to influence discussions about heroism, identity, and moral development in post-apocalyptic settings, their conceptual legacy persisting in fan communities and creative works that draw inspiration from their unrealized potential while adapting their themes to new contexts and media formats. The world-building innovations that would have been introduced through these cancelled projects represented significant advances in the sophistication and complexity of post-apocalyptic setting design, their approaches to environmental storytelling and faction development, offering models for how interactive narratives could explore serious themes without sacrificing the accessibility and entertainment value that made gaming an effective medium for cultural communication. The ripple effects that these games might have had on the broader Fallout franchise and gaming culture more generally can only be imagined, but their influence would likely have extended far beyond their immediate commercial success to encompass changes in how developers approached narrative design, character development, and thematic exploration in interactive media designed for mature audiences seeking intellectually challenging entertainment. The lessons that might have been learned from experiencing these cancelled narratives remain available in theoretical form, their themes and character arcs offering insights into human nature and social organization that transcend the specific medium for which they were originally designed. Their continued existence in the realm of imagination demonstrates that creative works possess a form of immortality that survives the commercial and institutional failures that prevent their material realization. The psychology that binds together these forgotten protagonists across the boundaries of cancelled projects and abandoned storylines reveals patterns that speak to fundamental truths about human nature and the eternal struggle to find meaning in circumstances that seem designed to crush hope and extinguish the possibility of heroic action. Each of these lost champions represents not merely an individual character concept, but an archetypal approach to survival and moral development. In worlds where traditional frameworks for understanding right and wrong have been obliterated by catastrophic events beyond any single person's ability to control or prevent, the recurring theme of redemption that appears throughout these cancelled narratives suggests that their creators understood something profound about the human need for second chances and the possibility of transformation through adversity. Arnold Black and his brother Barney represented innocence corrupted by circumstances beyond their control, their potential journeys through the wasteland, offering opportunities to demonstrate that genuine goodness could survive even the most traumatic experiences if it was supported by family bonds and unwavering moral conviction. The Prisoner of Van Buren embodied the ultimate expression of this redemptive possibility, their very existence predicated on the idea that identity was not fixed by past actions but could be reconstructed through present choices and future commitments. Whether innocent or guilty, this character represented the proposition that human worth was not determined by history but by the decisions made when confronted with opportunities to help or harm, to build or destroy, to preserve or consume what remained of civilization's fragile achievements. Abel and his revolutionary companions from Fallout Extreme demonstrated that redemption could operate on both individual and institutional levels, their struggle against a corrupted Brotherhood of Steel representing the possibility that even the most noble organizations could lose their way, while simultaneously showing that principled resistance could restore lost virtue through sacrifice and dedicated service to worthy causes that transcended personal interest or survival. The Brotherhood initiates from the cancelled sequel explored redemption as an ongoing process rather than a single transformative moment. Their character arcs designed to show how individuals shaped by institutional cultures could gradually develop beyond their training and conditioning to become leaders capable of independent, moral judgment and authentic human connection. Lilith's evolution from undisciplined hothead to mature warrior, Rhombus's growth from obsessive technician to strategic thinker, Maxis's journey from legacy-burdened youth to confident leader, and Scarlet's transformation from revenge-driven assassin to protector of innocence. All these narratives shared the common thread of potential fulfilled through struggle against internal limitations and external challenges. The theme of individual desires conflicting with collective good appears consistently throughout these lost stories, reflecting their creators' understanding that post-apocalyptic survival required balancing personal needs and wants against the welfare of larger communities and the preservation of values that made survival worthwhile rather than merely prolonging existence. This tension was not presented as easily resolved through simple moral formulas, but as an ongoing challenge that required constant vigilance and frequent sacrifice from those who chose to take responsibility for something beyond their immediate self-interest. Arnold Black's size and strength could have been used for personal dominance and intimidation, but his character concept emphasized using these gifts in service of technical problems and community welfare. His brother Barney's simplicity could have made him vulnerable to exploitation, but their relationship demonstrated how family bonds could provide protection and guidance that enabled even limited individuals to contribute meaningfully to collective survival and prosperity. The revolutionary team from Fallout Extreme faced the constant challenge of maintaining their principles while employing methods that seemed to contradict their stated objectives, their struggle illustrating how noble goals could be compromised by the practical demands of effective opposition to overwhelming force. Their commitment to liberation, rather than conquest, required them to reject the easy path of replacing Brotherhood tyranny with their own form of authoritarian control, choosing instead the more difficult course of empowering communities to govern themselves according to their own values and traditions. The impact of pre-war trauma on post-war identity formation represents another crucial theme that connected these cancelled characters across different projects and storylines. Each protagonist carried within their background some form of damage or limitation that resulted from the catastrophic collapse of the old world's social, technological, and moral frameworks, their individual healing processes serving as metaphors for the broader cultural recovery that would be necessary for genuine civilization to emerge from the radioactive ashes of human folly. The prisoners' mysterious past represented trauma that had been either forgotten or deliberately suppressed, their journey of self-discovery requiring them to confront painful truths about their own actions and motivations, while deciding whether knowledge of past mistakes should determine future possibilities. This character embodied the proposition that identity could be reconstructed through conscious choice, rather than being forever determined by historical circumstances. The Brotherhood initiates each carried different forms of institutional trauma that resulted from growing up within military cultures that prioritized efficiency and obedience over individual development and authentic human relationships. Their stories would have explored how such conditioning could be overcome through exposure to different perspectives and the development of genuine emotional connections that provided alternatives to the rigid hierarchies that had shaped their early understanding of human worth and social organization. The various approaches to survival represented by these lost protagonists encompassed the full spectrum of human responses to catastrophic change, from the simple physical dominance exemplified by the Black brothers, through the technical mastery demonstrated by Rhombus and Uber Dan, to the social manipulation perfected by Frank Luciano, and the strategic thinking developed by Abel, his revolutionary companions. Together, they would have provided players with comprehensive exploration of how different personality types and skill sets could contribute to post-war recovery and civilization building. The Brotherhood of Steel's recurring presence throughout these cancelled projects reflects both the organization's central importance to Fallout mythology and the creative possibilities that arose from exploring different canon interpretations of their role in post-war society. Rather than presenting the Brotherhood as uniformly heroic or villainous, these games would have demonstrated the full complexity of any institution that possessed advanced technology and military capability, showing how such organizations could serve either liberation or oppression, depending on the moral character of their leadership and the external pressures that shaped their strategic decisions. The Brotherhood's transformation into an oppressive regime in Fallout Extreme would have challenged players' assumptions about the relationship between technological advancement and moral progress, demonstrating that superior capabilities did not automatically confer superior wisdom or virtue. This narrative would have forced examination of whether protective organizations could maintain their virtue indefinitely, or whether power inevitably corrupted even the most well-intentioned institutions when they possessed overwhelming advantages over those they claimed to serve. The Brotherhood Initiates from the cancelled sequel would have shown the organization from the perspective of individuals who had been shaped by its culture, but retained the capacity for independent moral judgment and personal growth. Their stories would have explored whether military institutions could produce leaders capable of adapting to changing circumstances, while maintaining their commitment to the principles that justified their existence in the first place. The appeal of military structure in post-apocalyptic settings that characterize so many of these cancelled games reflected their creators' understanding that catastrophic social breakdown created psychological needs for order, purpose, and belonging that traditional civilian institutions could not satisfy. The military offered clear hierarchies, defined roles, and comprehensible objectives that provided stability and meaning for individuals struggling to find their place in a world that had lost most of its familiar reference points. But these narratives would have also explored the dangers inherent in military solutions to civilian problems, showing how the same qualities that made military organizations effective in combat situations could become obstacles to the political flexibility and moral nuance required for successful governance and social reconstruction. The tension between military efficiency and democratic accountability would have been a recurring theme that challenged players to consider the proper relationship between armed force and legitimate authority. The different interpretations of the Brotherhood across these cancelled projects would have demonstrated how the same organization could evolve in radically different directions, depending on the historical pressures and moral choices that shaped its development over time. This multiplicity of possibilities would have enriched the franchise's exploration of institutional dynamics, while providing players with opportunities to examine their own assumptions about heroism, authority, and the proper use of superior capability. The character archetypes that appeared repeatedly throughout these lost narratives represented fundamental categories of human response to extreme adversity, their presence across different games and settings suggesting that certain personality types and survival strategies remained constant regardless of specific historical circumstances or technological conditions. These archetypes served as vehicles for exploring universal themes, while also providing frameworks that players could use to understand their own approaches to challenge and moral decision-making. The noble savage archetype embodied by characters like Big Betty, and to some extent Barney Black, represented the proposition that virtue could survive and even flourish in circumstances that seemed designed to reward selfishness and brutality. These characters demonstrated that moral clarity was not dependent on intellectual sophistication or cultural refinement, that simple dedication to protecting others and preserving what was good could be more valuable than complex philosophical frameworks that might justify abandoning principle for expediency. The reluctant hero, represented by figures like Abel and the Van Buren prisoner, explored the theme of leadership thrust upon individuals who had not sought such responsibilities but discovered that circumstances demanded their acceptance of roles that transcended personal preference or comfort. These characters embodied the idea that heroism was not about seeking glory or proving superiority, but about responding appropriately when the welfare of others depended on someone accepting the burden of difficult decisions and dangerous actions. The skilled specialist archetype, exemplified by characters like Rhombus, Caleb, and Scarlet, examined the relationship between technical competence and moral responsibility, exploring how individuals whose abilities made them valuable to their communities could maintain their humanity while serving functions that required them to focus on destruction rather than creation. These characters would have demonstrated that specialization in violence or other potentially dehumanizing activities did not automatically corrupt those who practiced them if they maintained clear understanding of why their skills were necessary and for whom they were being employed. The legacy character, represented by Maxis, explored themes of inheritance, expectation, and the challenge of establishing individual identity while honoring family tradition and institutional culture. This archetype examined how the advantages provided by privileged backgrounds could become burdens if they prevented individuals from developing their own perspectives and capabilities, while also showing how inherited wisdom and resources could be transformed into foundations for genuine achievement rather than mere replication of past success. Together, these archetypes would have provided comprehensive exploration of human potential under extreme circumstances, their individual stories combining to create a complex portrait of how different personality types and approaches to life could contribute to the collective project of rebuilding civilization from the ruins of catastrophic collapse. Their diversity would have ensured that players with different temperaments and moral orientations could find characters whose perspectives resonated with their own, while also being challenged to consider alternative approaches to survival and moral development. The narrative functions served by these different character types extended beyond simple entertainment or wish fulfillment to encompass serious examination of philosophical questions about human nature, social organization, and moral responsibility that remained relevant regardless of whether players ever experienced nuclear war or social collapse. The post-apocalyptic setting provided a laboratory for exploring these themes in their purest form, stripped of the complex institutional frameworks and cultural traditions that might obscure fundamental principles in more conventional narrative contexts. The educational value that these lost stories might have provided would have gone far beyond simple moral instruction to include sophisticated analysis of leadership dynamics, institutional behavior, and the psychological processes that enabled individuals and communities to maintain hope and purpose despite overwhelming adversity. Players would have gained insights into human resilience and adaptability, while also learning to recognize the warning signs of corruption and moral decay that could threaten even well-intentioned organizations and individuals. The emotional resonance that these cancelled narratives continue to generate among fans and critics demonstrates that their themes and character concepts touched on fundamental human concerns that transcended the specific medium for which they were originally designed. Their continued existence in the realm of imagination suggests that creative works possess a form of immortality that survives commercial failure and institutional abandonment, their influence persisting through informal networks of cultural transmission that preserve and adapt their insights for new audiences and changing circumstances. The butterfly effect of creative decisions ripples through time and space, with consequences that extend far beyond the immediate circumstances of their making. Each cancelled character and abandoned storyline, representing not merely a lost opportunity for entertainment, but a fundamental alteration in the cultural landscape that shapes how millions of people understand heroism, morality, and the possibilities for human growth under extreme adversity. These forgotten protagonists would have changed the very DNA of interactive storytelling, their unique perspectives and moral frameworks creating new possibilities for player identification and emotional engagement that might have influenced an entire generation of creative works. Consider how the inclusion of Arnold Black as an available protagonist in the original Fallout might have altered player expectations about the relationship between physical capability and moral authority. His combination of technical expertise and intimidating presence, offering solutions to the water chip crisis that emphasized engineering innovation, balanced with carefully controlled applications of overwhelming force. His approach to the Master's philosophical arguments about human evolution would have been fundamentally different from the canonical Vault Dwellers' responses. His practical understanding of mechanical systems providing him with unique insights into the flaws and limitations of the Unity project's biological imperatives. The ripple effects of Arnold's presence would have extended beyond individual quest solutions to encompass broader changes in how the Fallout universe understood the relationship between intelligence and strength, between technical knowledge and moral wisdom. His character would have demonstrated that physical intimidation could serve humanitarian purposes when properly applied, that the same capabilities that made someone dangerous could also make them valuable as protectors and problem solvers for communities that lacked such resources. The social dynamics that would have emerged from Arnold's interactions with the hub's merchant networks would have created entirely different economic and political relationships between the major settlements. His reputation as someone who could both repair critical equipment and enforce agreements through physical presence, making him a valuable mediator in disputes that might otherwise have escalated into violence. The trust that his technical competence would have generated, combined with the respect that his imposing presence commanded, would have opened diplomatic possibilities that the canonical narrative never explored. Barney Black's simple moral clarity would have provided the Fallout universe with an entirely different approach to the ethical dilemmas that characterized post-nuclear survival. His inability to understand complex rationalizations for harmful behavior, cutting through the sophisticated arguments that often obscured fundamental questions about right and wrong. His presence would have demonstrated that intellectual limitations did not prevent someone from making sound moral judgments, that wisdom and intelligence were not synonymous qualities in circumstances where survival often depended more on character than cleverness. The impact of Barney's straightforward approach to the Master's conversion attempts would have been profound. His responses to arguments about evolutionary superiority and species transcendence, revealing the weaknesses in philosophical frameworks that relied on intellectual intimidation rather than genuine moral reasoning. His rejection of Unity's promises would have been based not on tactical analysis or scientific understanding, but on the simple recognition that the Master's methods harmed innocent people regardless of their stated objectives. The educational implications of having characters like the Black Brothers available as player avatars would have extended far beyond the immediate gaming experience to influence how young people understood the relationship between individual capability and social responsibility, between personal achievement and collective welfare. Their examples would have provided frameworks for thinking about how different types of strength and intelligence could be channeled toward constructive purposes, rather than mere personal advancement or dominance over others. Tanya Macmillan's stealth-based approach to problem-solving would have revolutionized player expectations about combat and conflict resolution in role-playing games. Her preference for surgical precision over overwhelming force, creating new possibilities for avoiding unnecessary violence, while still achieving tactical objectives. Her methods would have demonstrated that effectiveness in dangerous situations did not require the kind of spectacular displays of power that characterized more conventional heroic narratives. That true skill often involved accomplishing objectives without anyone realizing what had been done. The intelligence networks that Tanya could have established throughout the wasteland would have created entirely different information dynamics within the Fallout universe. Her ability to gather and analyze data about faction movements and political developments, providing players with strategic advantages that were based on knowledge rather than superior firepower or technological resources. Her presence would have emphasized the importance of understanding one's environment and opponents rather than simply overpowering them through direct confrontation. Frank Luciano's diplomatic abilities would have opened entirely new categories of quest resolution. Based on social manipulation and political maneuvering, rather than combat or technical problem solving, his natural charisma, creating possibilities for resolving conflicts through negotiation and compromise that might have prevented some of the wasteland's most destructive confrontations. His approach to the various faction disputes would have emphasized finding common ground and mutual benefit rather than choosing sides in zero-sum competitions for resources and territory. The long-term consequences of Frank's diplomatic successes would have created a fundamentally different post-war political landscape, one where cooperation between settlements and factions was more common and sustainable than the constant warfare that characterized much of the canonical Fallout timeline. His influence would have demonstrated that charismatic leadership could serve constructive purposes when guided by genuine concern for others' welfare, rather than mere personal ambition or desire for power. The alternative interpretation of the Brotherhood of Steel presented in Fallout Extreme would have forced players to confront uncomfortable questions about the corrupting influence of superior technology and military capability, challenging assumptions about the relationship between advanced knowledge and moral authority that had been largely unexamined in previous Fallout games. This darker vision of technological guardianship would have provided crucial perspective on the dangers inherent in any system that concentrated power in the hands of self-appointed elites who claimed to serve the greater good while remaining unaccountable to those they governed. The revolutionary movement led by Abel and his companions would have offered players an entirely different model for heroic action in post-apocalyptic settings, one that emphasized collective organization and principled resistance rather than individual achievement and personal glory. Their struggle against oppressive authority would have demonstrated that meaningful change required sustained commitment from multiple people working together toward common objectives, that no single hero could solve the fundamental problems that plagued post-war society without institutional support and community engagement. The strategic innovations that Abel's revolution would have introduced to Fallout gameplay would have emphasized planning, coordination, and resource management over the individual skill and equipment optimization that characterized more conventional role-playing experiences. Players would have learned to think in terms of building and maintaining organizations rather than simply improving their personal capabilities, their success depending on their ability to inspire others and coordinate complex operations rather than their proficiency with weapons or technical systems. The Prisoner from Van Buren would have provided the Fallout universe with its most psychologically complex protagonist, their ambiguous identity and uncertain past, forcing players to grapple with fundamental questions about the relationship between personal history and moral worth that had been largely avoided in previous games. This character would have demonstrated that heroism could emerge from the most unlikely backgrounds, that redemption was possible, regardless of past mistakes or current circumstances, if individuals were willing to accept responsibility for their choices and commit themselves to worthy causes. The moral flexibility that characterized the prisoner's potential responses to various challenges would have created unprecedented opportunities for players to explore ethical gray areas and complex moral dilemmas that had no clear right or wrong answers, their decisions shaped by practical considerations and personal values rather than simple adherence to predetermined moral categories. This approach would have elevated role-playing games beyond simple power fantasies to encompass serious examination of philosophical questions about duty, loyalty, and the nature of human worth. The Brotherhood initiates from the cancelled sequel, would have provided the most comprehensive exploration of military culture and institutional dynamics ever attempted in interactive entertainment, their individual character arcs demonstrating how different personality types and backgrounds could be shaped by organizational pressures while retaining their capacity for independent moral judgment and personal growth. Their stories would have shown how institutions could serve both positive and negative functions depending on the leadership and circumstances that guided their development. Lilith's evolution from undisciplined specialist to mature leader would have illustrated the possibility that even the most problematic individuals could learn to channel their abilities constructively if they were provided with appropriate guidance and meaningful challenges that required them to develop beyond their initial limitations. Her story would have demonstrated that talent without discipline was ultimately self-defeating, while discipline without genuine understanding of purpose was merely conformity that stifled rather than enhanced individual potential. Rhombus's journey from obsessive technician to strategic thinker would have explored the relationship between specialized knowledge and broader understanding, showing how technical expertise could be transformed from narrow focus into comprehensive capability through exposure to different perspectives and acceptance of responsibility for outcomes that extended beyond immediate professional concerns. His character would have bridged the gap between scientific curiosity and practical application that characterized many post-war challenges. The creative process behind character development that these cancelled games would have showcased represents one of the most sophisticated approaches to interactive storytelling ever attempted. Their emphasis on psychological complexity and moral ambiguity, demonstrating that video games could serve as vehicles for serious artistic expression rather than mere entertainment or escapism. The techniques and principles that their creators employed would have influenced an entire generation of game developers and interactive media designers. The balance between player agency and character definition that these lost narratives would have achieved represents the holy grail of role-playing game design, providing players with meaningful choices and authentic character development opportunities while maintaining coherent storytelling and emotional engagement that served larger thematic purposes. Their solutions to this fundamental tension would have established new standards for what interactive narratives could accomplish when properly executed. The role of concept art in establishing character identity that these cancelled projects demonstrated shows how visual design could serve narrative functions that extended far beyond simple aesthetic appeal. Their character designs, communicating personality traits, background information, and thematic significance through careful attention to details that reinforced rather than contradicted the written aspects of character development. This integration of visual and textual storytelling elements would have influenced how creative teams approached character creation in interactive media. The reasons why some characters resonate while others are forgotten that these lost protagonists help relate to fundamental human needs for identification, aspiration, and moral guidance that effective fictional characters must address if they hope to achieve lasting cultural significance. The characters that would have emerged from these cancelled games possessed the psychological complexity and moral substance necessary for such resonance, their loss representing a genuine impoverishment of the cultural resources available for understanding heroism and human potential. The fan community's role in preserving cancelled content that these projects have inspired demonstrates how passionate audiences can serve as custodians of creative works that official institutions have abandoned. Their dedication, ensuring that valuable ideas and characters survive commercial failure to influence future artistic endeavors and cultural conversations. The modding communities that have attempted to recreate aspects of these lost games represent grassroots cultural preservation efforts that deserve recognition and support. The recycling of ideas and concepts across the franchise that has characterized Fallout's development history shows how creative elements can achieve forms of immortality that transcend their original contexts, their influence persisting through adaptation and reinterpretation that allows valuable insights to reach audiences despite institutional failures that prevented their initial realization. This process of cultural evolution ensures that good ideas eventually find expression even when their first attempts at manifestation are unsuccessful. The educational value that these cancelled narratives would have provided extends beyond entertainment to encompass serious examination of leadership principles, ethical decision-making, and social organization that remains relevant for anyone seeking to understand human behavior under pressure or trying to develop their own capabilities for positive contribution to their communities. Their loss represents a genuine educational opportunity that will never be directly available, but whose lessons can still be extracted through careful analysis of their conceptual frameworks. The therapeutic functions that interactive storytelling can serve through providing safe spaces for exploring difficult emotions and moral dilemmas that these lost games would have offered represents one of the medium's most valuable but underexplored potentials. Their sophisticated approach to character psychology and moral development, showing how games could serve healing and growth functions for players struggling with their own identity issues and ethical challenges. The cultural conversations that these narratives would have sparked about authority, technology, and human nature represent missed opportunities for collective examination of issues that remain crucially important for contemporary society. Their themes and questions, providing frameworks for discussing current political and social challenges through the safe distance that fictional settings provide for exploring controversial or uncomfortable topics. And so we reach the end of our journey through the archives of possibility, having walked alongside heroes who exist only in the realm of what might have been, their stories forever suspended at the moment of potential fulfillment, when creative vision stood poised to become interactive reality. These 13 forgotten protagonists, from Arnold Black's gentle strength to Scarlett's deadly precision, from the prisoner's uncertain identity to Abel's revolutionary courage, remain eternal guardians of dreams deferred but never truly abandoned. In the quiet spaces between sleeping and waking, they continue their vigil over the wasteland of imagination, their weapons raised against forces that threaten hope itself, their hearts beating with love for people they will never meet and causes they will never serve, except in the infinite theater of dreams, where all stories achieve their perfect conclusions. Their sacrifice was not death but incompletion, not tragedy but eternal possibility that inspires every dreamer who has ever wondered whether individual courage could make a difference in circumstances that seem designed to crush the human spirit. Rest now, wanderer of lost narratives, and let these unsung heroes keep watch over your sleeping hours. Know that somewhere in the wasteland of possibility, the forgotten stand guard so that hope may survive another night. Their dedication ensuring that tomorrow will always carry within it the promise of stories yet untold, heroes yet unborn, and dreams that refuse to surrender to the forces that would silence them forever. Sleep peacefully, knowing that the watch continues, and that love endures even when all seems lost.